One Piece. The worst pirates in history, starting from Rock's pirates. Chapter 21. The reason for Roger's sulking was actually quite simple. In short, it was during the last skirmish between the Roger pirates and the Kuja pirates, 2 years ago, before Shaki resigned from her position as pirate empress. During a lull in the battle, Shaki slipped Rayleigh a small note that read, "Come pick me up, Shaki." If it were just that, Roger wouldn't have been entirely against it. Although he also liked Shaki very much, he was still willing to respect Shaki's personal wishes. The key was that everyone, especially him, Roger, was super eager to be the one Shaki loved. Yet, that scoundrel Rayleigh actually said he didn't want to be tied down by romance. Even more outrageous, Shaki had given him that note 2 years ago, but that scoundrel held it in for 2 years before finally telling him. As if doing so would prove he truly didn't want to be bound by romance. That scoundrel only cared about his own thoughts. Did he not know that his behavior was far more annoying than holding this matter in for 2 years? Roger's unusual behavior caught Jabba's attention. He slung an arm around Rayleigh's neck, digging for gossip. Rayleigh, I've noticed something. Roger's unhappiness started right after you two talked in the captain's quarters. What exactly did you say to Roger in the captain's quarters? Rayleigh was startled, his eyes nervously darting away. Nothing. How could he tell Jabba about that again? Fortunately, Roger's mood came and went quickly. In a flash, he had recovered his spirits. Everyone. I will not give up. Plunder. That is the essence of a pirate crew. Anything you want. Just snatch it. Let's set sail for Hashinosu Island. Awoo. The Roger pirates cheered loudly in response. Opportunity is equal. Go and snatch Shaki. Amidst the shouts and yells, the Roger pirates changed course, heading towards Hashinosu Island. Hashinosu Island. After 2 years of development and news fermenting, Shaki's rip-off bar had become a famous landmark in the pirate world. Any pirate who came to the New World waters and didn't check in here would be too embarrassed to say he was making a living in the New World. It was precisely because of this that the long queue outside Shaki's bar now meant you could barely hope to enter and catch a glimpse of Shaki for at least a month. Whoa, still so many people. Rox led his crew, they had just returned from an external raiding mission. As the hosts, the Rox pirates certainly didn't need to queue with the other small fry pirates. Rox led his group into the bar, sitting down in their exclusive gathering area. Everyone drank and dined, resting, and Shaki temporarily abandoned the small fry pirates to serve Rox and the others. What's wrong, Rox? You have a satisfied look, but your thoughts aren't on me. How lonely. Huh. Rox was stunned, he hadn't even noticed Shaki approaching to talk. No, it should be said that he noticed Shaki's approach, but because his heart was already set on someone else, he no longer paid as much attention to Shaki. Mama ma ma, ha 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 ha. Charlotte Linlin burst into laughter nearby, patting Rox's shoulder. Terrifying, isn't it? A woman's intuition. Whitebeard expressed his confusion, asking Charlotte Linlin, what exactly happened. Stussy took a drag from her cigarette, as if seeing through everything, and said with a smile, of course it's about a woman. That's a look of happiness, like a child has been born. As she spoke, her expression instantly darkened. Her beautiful eyes first glanced to the right at Whitebeard. This man remained as hard-hearted as ever during these 2 years, and her soft touch simply couldn't soften him. Then she looked to her left at York. This kid had frequently attacked her during operations over the past 2 years. If she hadn't been constantly vigilant, he probably would have succeeded. However, Stussy also vaguely sensed that although York attacked her, his motivation was no longer as fervent as it once was. It was as if it was just a normal friendly squabble among comrades. Am I really that unattractive? Stussy murmured inwardly, then tipped her head back and drained the entire glass of rum Shaki had just given her. Rox, of course, couldn't have noticed Stussy's inner thoughts. Seeing his secret easily exposed by 3 women, he instantly became furious. You're too loud. Can you shut up? This is a secret that no one is allowed to speak of. It must be strictly confidential. Hearing this, York, who was embracing Gloriosa nearby and thought this was just a joke, was stunned. Hey, Rox. No way. You actually have a child. Shut up. York. Rox roared angrily at York, but then a smile appeared on his face. You seem a bit lacking, kid. How long have you been with Gloriosa, and her belly shows no sign? Are you impotent? Gloriosa, embraced by York, instantly flushed, straightening up to refute Rox, but York pulled her back by the shoulder. York, who should have been angry, smiled calmly and said, "My devil fruit ability allows me to precisely control when I want to have children. Also, I don't trust our current crew. If I were to have a child with Gloriosa now, some of you scoundrels here might try to use my child to threaten me. Rox, I advise you, hide your wife and child well. If these scoundrels here find out their whereabouts, heh heh heh." Rox put away his smile, his eyes vigilantly scanning the surrounding Rox Pirates members, and said in a deep voice, "Don't worry. I've already taken care of that without you saying anything. Shacky. I'm here. It's me." Suddenly, the bar's main door was violently pushed open, and a group of completely unfamiliar individuals rushed in. "Hi, Shacky-chan. Photos. Photos." Click, click, the dazzling flash of old-fashioned cameras illuminated the bar, and the Rox Pirates turned their heads in annoyance. Everyone was startled, and then everyone looked wary. Shacky, however, responded calmly to the intruders, "It's Roger." Bang. Rox had teleported in front of the leading intruder at some point, their heads butting together. "Roger. You scoundrel, how dare you come to my island?" Roger confronted Rox head-on, butting heads with him. "This is Shacky's shop. Don't forget. Fighting between customers is forbidden here. Stop yelling. You porcupine. There should be a long queue at the main entrance. Didn't you queue? How did you get in?" "There wasn't much of a queue anyway, was there? Let's drink. Lads." "Awoo." York turned to look out the window. The long snaking queue that would have stretched for a month was now all lying on the ground, groaning and moaning. "They've all been taken care of." York smiled calmly, not surprised. Then he looked at the boisterous Roger and his group, a flicker of anticipation in his eyes. Worthy opponents have appeared. I can't take it anymore, these guys are too noisy. Newgate, Bill. Put it on Rox's tab. Whitebeard, unable to stand the chattering Roger Pirates, got up and left the bar. Rox and Roger challenged and threatened each other, but in the end, neither made a move. The Roger Pirates sat down in the bar as they wished. Shacky first greeted the pirates who worked for her for free, serving drinks and food to the Roger pirate crew, then quietly approached Roger and whispered, "Roger, where is Rayleigh?" Roger's eyes, which were completely heart-shaped as he looked at Shacky, suddenly froze when he heard this. The memory of his conversation with Rayleigh in the captain's cabin once again struck him hard. Roger pretended as if nothing had happened. "Oh, I did ask him to come, but he said he suddenly felt a bit unwell and stayed on the ship to sleep." Shacky sighed softly and turned away, a little dejected, puffing out her cheeks. Clearly, Rayleigh's evasive behavior had hurt her, she had given him the note herself. On the other side, York gently patted Gloriosa's perky rear. "That's the Roger you've been thinking about. He's here, aren't you going over?" Gloriosa glared at York, annoyed, "You scoundrel. You just love playing these games." Then she raised her hand and waved towards Roger. "Hey, Roger. Long time no see. I miss you so much." However, Roger didn't hear her at all, or perhaps he heard but pretended not to, his attention entirely focused on Shacky as she turned and walked away. Seeing this, a hint of sadness flashed in Gloriosa's eyes. Although she had now completely become York's, a trace of lingering affection for Roger still remained in her heart. But in the end, this man was still completely uninterested in her. "Roger!" An enraged Gloriosa roared out loud, her voice drowning out all the noise in the bar. Roger turned his head, looking impatient. "Why are you yelling at me, Gloriosa? I like you." Gloriosa shouted, "I'm being controlled by York's ability right now. I hope to be saved by you." "Huh. You said you're being controlled." Roger looked at Gloriosa, who was sitting next to York, with the latter's arm around her waist. "Aren't you two in a very loving relationship? If you're really being controlled by an ability, then shed a tear for me now." Gloriosa felt wronged inside, and tears indeed welled up and streamed down her face. Roger's expression stiffened, and Jabba next to him immediately egged him on. Oh dear, you made her cry. Roger, you're truly wicked. Get lost. I was just joking." Roger, embarrassed and angry, yelled at Jabba, but when he turned back to look at Gloriosa, his expression became serious. I don't like you, Gloriosa. The only woman I like is Shaki. This won't change whether you're pitiful or not. And besides, don't think I don't know about your relationship with York. You've been his woman for a long time. Gloriosa's continuously flowing tears instantly stopped, and she snorted unhappily. Yes. You useless simp. The man I love most now is York. I have no feelings for you left at all. With that, Gloriosa snuggled into York's arms, looked up, and kissed his cheek, leaving a red lipstick mark. York smiled faintly and embraced Gloriosa. Today's event marked the end of Gloriosa's past romantic feelings. From now on, Gloriosa would completely belong to him. There would be no room for any other man in her heart. However, while Gloriosa's heart was settled, a feud had also been formed between York and Roger. Roger. York spoke, addressing the man who would become the Pirate King. Before you leave this island, let's find a place to fight. You made my woman cry. I can't let this go without a response. Roger immediately pouted, annoyed. You fool. Don't twist words. I'm the victim, alright. York responded with a smile, that's how this world is. Reasoning isn't our pirate custom. Our swords are. HMPH. If that's the case, then come on. Be careful not to even withstand one of my slashes. If you can do that, I look forward to it. Their challenge attracted the attention of everyone in the bar. Compared to the confrontation with Rocks, York and Roger's exchange seemed like a genuine deathmatch was about to happen. John, Wang Ji, Silver Axe formerly Fierce, who earned the title Silver Axe, and others all showed a hint of anticipation in their eyes. As the second youngest member of the entire Rocks pirate crew, York's strength had been continuously growing. However, up until now, York had only relied on the basic abilities of his devil fruit to resolve almost all his battles, making it impossible for people to gauge his true strength. Now that an opportunity had finally arisen, they all wanted to know how strong York truly was. Especially Wang Ji, his eyes flickered, wanting to know even more. Because this would determine the success or failure of one of his plans. After dealing with York, Roger acted as if nothing had happened, turning his head to greet Charlotte Linlin and her group. Where's Newgate? I want to drink with him. He's already gone back, mama haha. He found you guys too noisy. Roger pouted. Why was it that one after another, no one would make things easy for him? Suddenly, with a thud, Shaki, who had been sulking alone by the bar, fell to the ground. Wah! Shaki collapsed. Lady Shaki. The entire bar instantly plunged into chaos. Countless pirates who worked for free in the bar surrounded Shaki, their eyes filled with anticipation and eagerness. I want to serve. I want to serve. Get lost. Gloriosa roared, driving all the surrounding pirates away. No men are allowed to come near. She helped the fallen Shaki up. With Shaki's physical condition, falling like that wouldn't cause any serious harm, but it's lovesickness. Gloriosa's expression was solemn. She had also suffered from this illness because of Roger in the past. It was clear that Shaki was like this because Rayleigh hadn't shown up. Honestly, these men, one after another, are either simps or cowards. They're all a bunch of good-for-nothings. Gloriosa cursed angrily, including all the male pirates except York in her tirade. However, everyone was concerned about Shaki at the moment, and no one cared what Gloriosa was shouting. She scooped Shaki up in her arms and walked towards the stairs leading to the bar's back room. I'm taking Shaki upstairs to rest. You scoundrels, no one but women are allowed up there. York watched Gloriosa disappear with Shaki, then turned and left the bar, walking towards the coast where Roger and his crew had hidden their pirate ship. Before fighting Roger, he felt it was necessary to have a match with Rayleigh first. Yo-ha-ho-ho, 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 yo-ha-ho-ho. Binks Brew, carried by the sea breeze, rides the waves as it pleases. Hashinosu Island Port Dock. Rayleigh sat alone on the ship's rail, hugging his guitar and singing loudly. His eyes looked towards the island, in the direction of Shaki's rip-off bar. There was deep affection, but also timidity. At this moment, he didn't know what to do. Agree to Shaki's request. What about the camaraderie with his brothers like Roger and Jabba? Bluntly refuse Shaki. He was indeed a bit unwilling. That was Shaki. Although Rayleigh didn't want to be bound by romantic entanglements, Shaki was different, she was special. Amidst the singing, a young, tall figure walked from the direction of the island. Rayleigh was startled from his heartfelt singing. Although he didn't stop singing, his focus shifted to the newcomer. Is it really necessary to be so hesitant? York leapt onto the Oro Jackson, leaning against the railing beside Rayleigh. If you want it, you want it. If you don't, you don't. Being so indecisive is not at all like Roger's first mate. Rayleigh stopped singing and asked without turning his head, "What are you doing here?" "To fight you." York was concise. Rayleigh turned to look at York. The latter flicked his left thumb, and the long sword he held in his hand unsheathed an inch. Rayleigh sighed softly. "Is it because of Shaki?" "Sort of. The main point is, I have no reason to let go of a woman like her." Rayleigh's eyes instantly sharpened. Although he was somewhat timid when facing Shaki's fervent emotions, if someone truly wanted to snatch Shaki from him, he could be ruthless enough to kill. York grinned. That's the effect he wanted. Fighting an enraged Rayleigh was dangerous, but it was also the best way to test the results of his efforts over the years. After all, the Rock's pirate crew didn't allow infighting on the island, and York didn't dare to get seriously injured during external missions. In this situation, Rayleigh of the Roger Pirates was the best target. Rayleigh looked at the strong fighting spirit emanating from York, turned to put away his guitar, and slowly drew the long sword from his waist. "Your ability is very dangerous. Let me say this beforehand, I really dislike people like you constantly living around Shaki. Don't say such high-sounding words. There's no such thing as despicable or noble among pirates." York also drew the long sword from his waist. Compared to Rayleigh's sword, his was more ordinary. He hadn't had time to find good materials and a good swordsmith to custom make one. However, once armament hockey was wrapped around the blade, the gap between it and the famous sword in Rayleigh's hand was no longer so huge. A sharp, piercing electric friction sound suddenly emanated from Rayleigh's blade, and dazzling, blinding red lightning seemed to tear the air. Haoshoku coating, huh? York had been getting beaten up by rocks all these years, so he was already very familiar with this power. But perhaps due to his ordinary talent, he had never been able to fully master it in 4 years, always falling just short. It was like looking through a veil, hazy and indistinct, almost clear enough to see, yet unable to grasp the true form. Gripping the long sword with both hands, dense armament hockey flowed along the blade, like a babbling brook. "Blade of the other shore." Rayleigh roared, "Go to the underworld." York had no named moves, just a full-force slash. "You want to finish me in one move. You're still a bit lacking." The two swords collided, lightning exploded, and both men flew backward simultaneously. York, enveloped in lightning, just like he had been struck flying by rocks countless times before, crashed into the buildings on the island. Rayleigh, on the other hand, flew in a parabolic arc from the warship's deck and landed in the sea. York had anticipated his outcome. He pushed away the rubble pressing down on him and stood up with a relaxed expression. Aside from being slightly out of breath, he was unharmed. On the other side, Rayleigh's head emerged from the seawater, looking towards the island with a slight astonishment. Rock's artillery swordsmanship. He truly hadn't expected York to have mastered Rock's swordsmanship. Of course, he wasn't injured either, just blown away by the shockwave. His hands churned in the seawater, and in just a dozen seconds, Rayleigh successfully climbed ashore. York, his opponent, was already waiting on the shore. Without any superfluous words, the two clashed again, their swords colliding and erupting in a violent impact. Countless pirates around them were blown away, but the two themselves seemed rooted to the spot, unmoving. Clang, 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 clang. The two wielded their long swords like afterimages, Rayleigh's body shrouded in black-red lightning, his attack power pushed to its limit. Although York hadn't fully mastered Haoshoku coating and was suppressed by Rayleigh, the swordsmanship he learned from Rocks was not without resistance. The commotion of their battle gradually destroyed the surrounding buildings, and more pirates were blown away. The various experts drinking at Shaki's bar all narrowed their eyes. Rocks and Roger exchanged glances. "It's York. It's Rayleigh. They're fighting." The group immediately stopped drinking, putting down their cups and leaving the bar, swarming towards the point where the battle had erupted. Wave slash. York was sent flying by Rayleigh's sword, and after landing with a backflip, he immediately unleashed a golden flying slash. Golden Lion's swordsmanship. Rayleigh was startled, and after deflecting York's slash with his sword, he likewise returned a flying slash imbued with black-red hockey. York did not meet it head-on, dodging with a side jump. The crescent-shaped black-red slash plowed through the island town, and Rocks, with a grim expression, punched the approaching slash to pieces. York, you fool! This is my island. An enraged Rocks immediately unleashed terrifying Conqueror's hockey. Black-red lightning pierced through the sky and ground, directly striking the blades of York and Rayleigh, who were about to unleash their next attacks, from a distance. The two fiercely battling men paused simultaneously. York. An angry roar sounded, and Rocks, leading his Rocks pirate crew members, appeared on the rooftops of the buildings on the outskirts of the battlefield. Did you forget the rules of this island? Rayleigh. On the other side, Roger also appeared with his crew. Are you all right? Compared to Rocks, Roger was more concerned about Rayleigh's condition. Rayleigh shook his head lightly, I'm fine. Then everyone's attention focused on York. York was calm, showing no concern about Rocks, questioning. He rested his long sword on his shoulder and, facing Rocks, answered with a smile, of course I remember your rules. First, acknowledge yourself as a member of the Rocks pirate crew. And acknowledge that you are the captain. Second, do not attack comrades within Hashinosu Island or on the pirate crew ship. I haven't violated either of these two rules. There's another rule. Rocks angrily retorted, any pirate whose purpose is Shaki's bar, after arriving on this island, is not allowed to fight within the island. This rule was actually set by Shaki to ensure the bar could operate normally, without being smashed and rebuilt every other day. York grinned at the words. Roger and his pirate crew are indeed here for Shaki. But Rayleigh isn't. Rocks was stunned, then finally remembered that Rayleigh hadn't even come to the bar earlier. In fact, Rayleigh hadn't even landed on the island. How could anyone be sure that a person who didn't even land on the island was there for Shaki? Rocks reined in his anger, his gaze at York gradually calming, then becoming somewhat playful. Roger's side also fell silent. Clearly, Rayleigh's act of hiding on the ship indeed didn't comply with Shaki's no-fighting rule. Hey, Rayleigh. York withdrew his gaze from Rocks and turned to Rayleigh. If you admit that you came to this island for Shaki's bar, I'll stop fighting you. Otherwise, I'll continue to challenge you. Rayleigh's expression froze, his old face flushed, and he said, stiffening his neck, continue the fight. York scoffed at the words, what a coward. With that, York charged at Rayleigh, his cannon-style swordsmanship reappearing. Rayleigh also charged at York, unleashing his full Haoshoku-infused sword technique. The two once again engaged in fierce combat in the center of the arena. Roger scratched the back of his head. He could roughly guess why the two were fighting, but if Rayleigh didn't admit it himself, there was no way to act according to the rules. It was much simpler for Rox's side. Most of them actually wanted to see how strong York was now. Since Rayleigh wasn't following the island's rules, it was a good opportunity for them to witness York's full power. Lions severing valley. Once again creating distance, York swung the long saber in his hand, rapidly unleashing dozens of golden flying slashes. Golden Lion, who was watching, immediately froze, that's my move. This kid. When did he secretly learn it? Rayleigh easily deflected York's flying slashes, sending them all into the sky, where the clouds were cut into countless fragments. Wielding his Haoshoku-infused blade, he delivered a vertical slash. This time, York didn't dodge. Instead, he gripped his long saber with both hands and, with all his might, delivered a horizontal slash. Sweeping all directions. A horizontal, pure white slash shot out. It resembled a half-moon ring, not merely flying into the distance, but expanding outwards from York's center. Whitebeard's eyes narrowed, that's my move. Although his move had no name, and York's execution was somewhat altered, the effect produced was the same, slicing everything within a 180-degree radius in front of him into two halves, upper and lower. Crack. A slash not imbued with Conqueror's hockey was, after all, a little weaker against a Haoshoku-infused slash. York's half-moon slash was easily shattered, and he was forced to grip his saber with both hands, directly blocking Rayleigh's slash. Yah! Ha! With all his strength, he flicked his blade upwards, and York finally succeeded in guiding Rayleigh's slash skyward. Just then, Rayleigh rushed in front of York. It's over. With a diagonal slash, a huge wound appeared on York's chest, blood splattered, and he was sent flying, crashing into a cluster of buildings. Smoke rose, and Rayleigh calmly sheathed his saber. The victor has been decided. However, at this moment, neither Roger nor Rox spoke. A moment later, a cough came from the ruins of the building. Cough cough. Immediately after, a storm-like slash shot into the sky, sweeping away all the smoke. Holy white light bloomed from York's body. The members of the Rox pirate crew all groaned, their faces showing expressions of enjoyment. Even the pirates who had been blown away by the aftermath of the battle and hadn't died also showed expressions of joy and pleasure. Shaki-chan. Their eyes were hazy, as if they saw their dream Shaki making love to them. During this time, countless holy light tentacles with magic patterns were released from York's body. These tentacles wrapped around those affected by the ability, drawing a small portion of their life force to replenish York. A wound on York's chest, deep enough to almost see his ribs, healed rapidly, and his complexion returned to a healthy rosy color. Then, he retracted his tentacles, and the holy white light also gradually dimmed. York's face once again bore a confident smile, and he murmured to himself, "Conqueror's Haki infusion, so that's what it is." The next second, black-red Haki surged from his body, soaring into the sky. The shattered clouds above reconverged because of him, forming a swirling vortex of dark clouds. So powerful Haki. The Roger pirates and the Rox pirate crew were all stunned, including Roger and Rox, whose gazes at York became serious and scrutinizing. The next second, this immense Haki gradually retracted under York's control, bit by bit, like ribbons, coiling around the saber he held. The concentrated Conqueror's Haki emitted a dazzling red light due to its extreme density. Immediately after, this dazzling light shifted towards a deep black, and finally reverted to seemingly ordinary black-red lightning. The 1-meter-long saber in York's hand was thus gradually enveloped by the black-red lightning, spreading from the hilt towards the tip. And just as the entire long saber was wrapped in Conqueror's Haki lightning, suddenly, clink. With a crisp sound, the long saber in York's hand, which had dozens of nicks from clashing with Rayleigh, shattered into pieces on the ground. York, who was about to launch a counterattack, froze, completely unprepared for this situation. Rayleigh, who was tensed and ready to engage, also froze, clearly not expecting this either. Fortunately, there was Rox, a master of Haki, who knew what was happening and explained, "Your saber is too shoddy. It can't withstand your Haki." York then realized what had happened. However, after this incident, he no longer had the desire to continue fighting Rayleigh. "Never mind, let's call it a day. I've just had a breakthrough and need to go back and consolidate it properly." Looking up at Roger, York loudly declared, "Roger. Don't forget our agreement. We'll have a fight before you leave." Roger solemnly agreed, I'll look forward to it." This time, his words were much more serious. A York who had mastered Haoshoku was indeed qualified to be his opponent. Even if this young man was still very young and lacked a bit in various aspects. Seeing that Roger wasn't being perfunctory, York no longer lingered, turned, and quickly left. He indeed needed to go and properly consolidate the Haoshoku technique he had just comprehended in battle. As a transmigrator without a system, he couldn't be careless about such matters. Boom. The sea on the back of Hashinosu Island was forcibly split in two by a shockwave. York stood on the shore, breathing slightly, maintaining his punching posture, watching the sea slowly close in the middle. Rumble. A thunderous sound exploded, and the collision of the seawater stirred up huge waves. After adjusting his breath, York clenched his fist again to gather strength. Dark armament Haki wrapped around his fist and wrist, followed by black and red lightning. Exhaling and letting out a low shout, York threw a straight punch. The immense Haki merged with the power of his punch, transforming into a shockwave that directly pierced through the waves, splitting the sea, which had only just closed, once again. One punch, another punch, and another punch. York couldn't actually guarantee that he would unleash Haoshoku every time, as he had only just mastered it, and his proficiency was not yet sufficient. So he needed to practice again and again to improve his proficiency as quickly as possible. Fortunately, Perhaps because he was a transmigrator, York's hockey was almost inexhaustible. He threw punch after punch, unleashing Haoshoku, feeling no mental fatigue, only a noticeable drop in physical stamina. However, he could replenish his physical stamina through food, or by using his ability to drain the life force of pirates across the island. Therefore, although his Haoshoku training was occasionally interrupted, York actually continued to practice for 3 days and 3 nights straight. What a little monster. Rox appeared from the direction of the frozen laboratory. He had gone to check on the frozen giants again. Only after leaving the laboratory and seeing that York had not stopped practicing, he couldn't help but complain. It was truly the first time he had sincerely called someone a monster. Hey, kid! Rox shouted at York. Roger and his crew decided to leave the day after tomorrow. You can stop now and adjust your condition. Hearing this, York, after throwing one more punch, finally stopped and turned his head to confirm with Rox. Roger and his crew are leaving the day after tomorrow. Ah, didn't you arrange a fight with Roger before? He asked me to inform you that if you don't fight, he's planning to leave tomorrow. Fight? Who said I wouldn't fight? York was in high spirits, ignoring Rox, and quickly walked towards the kitchen on Hashinosu Island. After a hearty meal, he cleaned himself and fell asleep. When York woke up again, it was already the morning of the day after tomorrow. His eyes opened, and in his arms was a soft, warm, and smooth body. Gloriosa let out a soft moan, and York twisted, pressing her beneath him. York, don't you have a duel with Roger today? That's right. So I need to relax before the fight. Outside the door, Stussy, who had deliberately passed by here countless times, paused. Once again, she heard the familiar sounds she had heard so many times before. Her pearly teeth gently bit her lower lip, her beautiful eyes filled with hesitation and uncertainty. She tentatively reached for the doorknob, but withdrew her hand like lightning the moment she touched it. No. I can't. I'm not like Gloriosa. With one hand on her forehead, Stussy told herself internally, I'm not that kind of promiscuous woman. However, as soon as that thought settled in her mind, images of Whitebeard rejecting her countless times instantly flashed through her head. She was also a woman. Or rather, she was human after all. After being a lickspittle for so long, constantly receiving no response, even the deepest feelings would fade. What's more, Stussy also had her own pride. What exactly was she inferior to Shaki in? Why could Whitebeard like Shaki but not her? As she thought, York's longing gaze, which he had once directed at her, flashed through her mind again. Although York's initial intention might have simply been to toy with her body, after such a long time of living together day and night, she had come to understand York quite well. This kid, although his ability was terrible and his personality was very lecherous, he was genuinely good to women. Gloriosa, before coming to Hashinosu Island, could be said to have never even met York. She was even a trophy York won after she was defeated by him. In Stussy's impression, Gloriosa, having gone through such an encounter, would only become a slave, not treated as a human being at all, except to help York vent his desires. Yet, in these past 2 years, York and Gloriosa had lived a life even happier than most married couples. As long as the request wasn't unreasonable, York would basically satisfy Gloriosa, and even when Gloriosa suffered grievances from Roger, York would immediately stand up for her without a second thought. Whether he could win or not was another matter. At least, York showed the responsibility of a man. To be honest, Stussy was indeed envious. She also longed for a man who could cherish her like that. One must know, she was already 36 years old this year. How many more years could she maintain this appearance and figure? Pursing her lips into a bitter smile, Stussy left somewhat dejectedly. She wanted to drink, she wanted to get completely drunk. Inside the room, Gloriosa's eyes were fixed on the direction of the door. She left again. Turning her head, she looked at the young face so close to her. Aren't you going to reel her in yet? I'm not in a hurry, why are you? York lowered his head, forcibly sealing Gloriosa's red lips, which still wanted to speak. An hour passed quickly. York, having simply released himself, wasn't actually fully satisfied. But this was just right now. Because he held expectations for what was to come, his desire for victory in battle would also be stronger. After all, this was a world where superstition could become reality. As long as one's belief was strong enough, no miracle was impossible to achieve. Coming to the kitchen, he quickly filled his stomach with a hearty meal. York didn't see Stussy there, knowing that she had most likely run off to Shacky's place. Arriving at Shacky's rip-off bar, he indeed saw her sitting in a corner of the bar, drinking alone. Yo! York, you're finally here. Roger's call made York put away his jumbled thoughts, and he looked at Roger, who was already drinking early in the morning. Are you ready? Of course. I'm ready anytime. Roger raised the glass in his hand. Before we fight, how about a drink together? York wanted to refuse, but the moment he lifted his foot, he felt he should agree. So he took a glass of whiskey from Shacky, clinked it with Roger, and downed it in one go. Roger also gulped down all the liquor in his glass. Yosh! The final preparations are complete. Let's go out and fight. Roger rose from his seat, leading a boisterous group of his subordinates out of the bar. York watched their retreating figures, then turned to glance at Shacky behind the bar. Has Rayleigh not appeared these past few days? The latter froze slightly, her eyes dimming. Although there was no answer, it spoke volumes. What a coward. York mocked him again, then casually said, how about considering giving up on Rayleigh and becoming my woman? Hashinosu Island, at the center of the ruins where York and Rayleigh had previously fought. York and Roger stood opposite each other, while the other members of their respective pirate crews gathered on either side of the battlefield. Is everyone ready? Rox roared, then picked up a stone and threw it high into the air. The moment the stone landed, York charged at Roger. His right fist clenched, without a named technique, but first, armament hockey coiled around it like flowing water, followed by black-red Haoshoku. Dark, seemingly destructive black-red lightning seeped into the flowing water, making the entire fist appear to be encased in a layer of black-red plasma. Faintly, Roger seemed to see the shadow of a certain scoundrel in York. This kid, surely not. Roger gulped inwardly, then calmed his mind and gripped his treasured sword, Ace, with both hands. Zeet. Black-red lightning coiled around the blade. Roger took a step forward and delivered an upward slash. Divine departure. The upward slashed longsword collided with the punch York threw from a distance. Boom. Deafening thunder exploded, and the lightning generated by the collision instantly pulverized the ruins of the entire battlefield. Then, lightning shot skyward. The clouds in the sky gathered, forming oppressive dark clouds, which then churned and split apart to either side. Haoshoku splitting the sky. Rox looked up at the sky, astonished by York's growth. 4 years ago, when York first arrived at Hashinosu Island, he was just a rookie who relied mainly on his devil fruit ability, with hockey barely at an introductory level. He never expected that in just 4 years, he had already mastered even Haoshoku coding. What a pair of monsters. Among the Rox pirates, Wang Ji's forehead broke out in a cold sweat. York's growth had also exceeded his expectations. His original plan had to be scrapped, he could only choose Shacky. Boom. At the center of the arena. With the intense collision and compression of hockey lightning, a larger-scale black-red lightning erupted, instantly engulfing half of the island, about 4 kilometers in diameter. All pirates within this range, except for the Roger pirates and the core members of the Rox pirates, almost entirely rolled their eyes and foamed at the mouth. In a distant corner, among the very few pirates not knocked out by the bottle's aftershocks, 2 pirates in kimonos stared intently at York, who was fighting Roger, their eyes shining. Found him. It's him. Destroy the hope of Kazuki. Back to the battlefield. The first clash was merely York and Roger greeting each other. After their fist and longsword forcibly collided, York's fists moved like a whirlwind, mimicking Luffy's gum-gum gatling, creating countless afterimages. Roger did the same, his longsword a phantom sword dance, clashing with York's fists. Bang, bang, bang. After dozens of punches, York gained no advantage. He knew that continuing to compete in attack frequency with an expert like Roger was meaningless. So he voluntarily distanced himself, charged briefly, then threw a punch from afar. Dazzling light bloomed on his fist. The moment his fist extended to its limit, the concentrated power magnified hundreds and thousands of times. A fist-shaped shockwave, seemingly connecting the sky and earth, surged towards Roger like an overwhelming tide. Whoa, whoa, whoa. This can't be. Jabba, watching the battle, exclaimed. Isn't that Garp's scoundrel move? How does this kid know it? Roger grinned. He didn't have time to blabber like Jabba. He gripped his longsword tightly and delivered a powerful vertical slash. It was still divine departure. This single slash cleanly split the shockwave York had launched into two halves. Terrifying impacts whistled past Roger's sides, plowing the ground in front of him into a V-shaped gully. Rumble. The sea behind him roared, and the nearby pirate ship bobbed with the waves. Meanwhile, on York's side, facing Roger's incoming slash, he chose to block with crossed arms. The black-red crescent-shaped slash had immense impact force, pushing his feet back on the ground repeatedly. After retreating more than a meter, sliding out two shallow grooves, York finally roared and sent Roger's slash flying into the sky. Slightly out of breath, York's eyes were grave. He could tell that Roger wasn't using his full power. Especially during the first clash, he had used exactly the same amount of strength as York. The gap is quite significant indeed. However, it's not completely without a chance. York's eyes sharpened. He would exploit Roger's carelessness, or rather, his playful attitude, to make him suffer a loss. Pulling his feet out of the shallow grooves, York stomped hard, and his entire body shot out like a streak of light. Roger's eyes flashed red. He saw it. York would faint as he charged forward. First, he would pretend to throw a punch, but the real killing blow would be a knee strike. In the real world, as York was about to reach Roger, he clenched his fist and bent his arm, gathering power, seemingly intending to punch Roger into the ground. In reality, as he pulled his bent arm back, his knee also rose simultaneously. If Roger chose to counter the punch he hadn't yet thrown, he would be solidly hit by that knee strike. Roger raised his sword and easily blocked York's feint, then looked up, revealing a smile that showed he had seen through everything. York lowered his head, a similar smile on his face, one that saw through everything. He had known for a long time that Roger possessed observation haki that could foresee the future. How could the future Pirate King not know this move? Therefore, his actual move was not the knee strike. The knee strike was the feint. The continuously charged fist was the real attack. Boom. With a violent downward smash, Roger theoretically should have seen this move as well, but he didn't dodge. Intentionally letting me hit you. I'll make you regret it. York roared as he forcibly slammed Roger into the ground. The ground cracked, and plates of earth buckled. Before the dust settled, York quickly delivered a second punch. Boom, 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 boom. Within a second, York simultaneously landed over a dozen punches on Roger's head and back. Roger endured all of them. Suddenly, a burst of haki erupted, and York was sent flying by a shockwave. Roger, looking somewhat disheveled, climbed out of the deep pit. That hurt. Kid. You've vented enough, haven't you? Roger swung his sword, scattering the smoke and dust. His expression became serious and solemn. Now I'm getting serious. York, who had been sent flying, landed, a slight smile playing on his lips. You let me touch you, Roger. Roger was puzzled. The next second, his entire body stiffened. This is. Ha! With a roar, haki erupted, clearing all the abilities York had imposed on him. However, York was precisely seizing this momentary flaw. Just as Roger dispelled York's ability, he had already rushed in front of Roger. His recharged fist heavily struck Roger's face, for the first time sending him flying far away. Roger's sturdy body flew directly off the island, skipping across the recently calm sea several times. No one thought anything bad would happen to Roger from that punch. They just thought York was clever enough to exploit Roger's deliberate vulnerability, making him suffer a loss. However, as time passed minute by minute, Roger still hadn't returned to the battlefield, and everyone finally realized something might be wrong. Could it be? Roger was really killed. How is that possible? Kaido voiced the conjecture, and Jabba loudly refuted him. Rox sneered, that guy gave up the fight himself. Let's call it a day, there's nothing more to see. York dispelled the haki wrapped around his fist and pouted unhappily, looking in the direction Roger had flown. He knew he couldn't defeat Roger at his current stage, but being treated like a child and being let win felt worse than getting a good beating. Roger. You're deliberately annoying me. Next time, I'll definitely use my own strength to knock you down. The Rox pirate crew disbanded just like that, and the Roger pirates also stopped lingering. They quickly rendezvoused with Rayleigh, who had been guarding the ship for the past few days, hoisted the sails, and swiftly sailed towards where Roger had fallen into the sea. But when they saw Roger floating on the sea, he had a silly, goofy smile, his eyes glazed over as if he was seeing some dreamlike scene, and he was mumbling things that made one want to punch him. Hey, hee hee, Shaky, don't be so impatient, it's my first time, oh ho ho, Shaky, oh ho, so comfortable, Shaky. Rayleigh's face darkened, and he slowly drew the long sword from his waist. Jabba, don't stop me. I'm going to cut this fool down. Unexpectedly, Jabba had no intention of stopping him, instead, he also took out a pair of battle axes. You're the one who shouldn't stop me. I'm going to hack this fool to pieces. The Roger Pirates farce was no longer relevant to Hashinosu Island. Regardless of why Roger was defeated, York ultimately won the battle. Upon returning to his room, Gloriosa, like an octopus, instantly pounced on York. Her fiery red lips conveyed passionate emotions. York supported Gloriosa with one hand, closed the door with the other, and holding his beautiful wife, the two walked together towards the bathroom. Shaky's rip-off bar. Stussy sat alone in a corner, drinking heavily all day. As the sun set, and the Rock's pirate crew gradually began to disperse, she suddenly called out to Whitebeard, who was about to leave. Newgate. Hiccup, I'll ask you one last time, Hiccup. Stussy hiccuped and asked intermittently, are you willing, Hiccup, to marry me? Whitebeard's eyes fixated on the flushed and drunken Stussy, and he let out a soft sigh. I'm sorry, Stussy, I truly don't have feelings for you. With that, he left the bar without any further hesitation. Thud. Clink. Clatter. Stussy collapsed onto the table, knocking the empty wine bottles scattered across it to the floor, where they shattered. Shaky walked over to her, gently patting her shoulder with a pained expression. She said nothing, nor did she know how to console her. After all, her own romance had yet to receive any response, so what right did she have to comfort Stussy? I'll take you back to your room. Shaky grabbed Stussy's arm and helped her up, the two of them slowly making their way towards the Skull Mountain. Along the way, all the pirates looked at the two of them with adoration in their eyes. Especially when looking at the unconscious Stussy, many felt a stir of desire. However, seeing that Shaky was the one escorting Stussy back to her quarters, they dismissed their inner thoughts. After all, compared to Stussy, what they most wanted was Shaky's favor. The two safely entered Skull Mountain, slowly approaching Stussy's room along the corridors and stairs. And just at that moment, York, who had just satisfied Gloriosa and was about to head to the kitchen for a meal, spotted them. He immediately changed his plans and turned to walk towards them. Do you need help? Shaky was startled by the question, looked up, and instinctively took a step back with Stussy. It's not good to take advantage of someone in their vulnerable state, York. York smiled but said nothing, only looking deeply at Stussy. Stussy shakily lifted her head. Looking at York in front of her, his face and Newgate's face kept switching back and forth. Stussy suddenly struggled free from Shaky's support and stumbled into York's arms. Woo woo. Woo woo woo. Suppressed sobs filled the air, and Shaky fell silent. York gently wrapped his arm around Stussy from behind. His actions were not flirtatious, it was a normal embrace between lovers expressing affection. After a long while, Stussy's crying gradually subsided. She lifted a tear-streaked face and said in a hoarse voice, York. Help me. Help me forget Newgate. Stussy, you. Shaky instinctively took half a step forward, wanting to intervene, but this was Stussy's own request. If she stopped her, would that be helping her or harming her? After all, she too suffered from lovesickness and knew how painful it was when the man she loved didn't reciprocate her feelings. York smiled at Shaky, very pleased that the latter hadn't stepped forward to dissuade them. He bent slightly, his hand reaching under Stussy's knees as he lifted her into his arms. She actively wrapped her arms around York's neck, clinging to him like a docile kitten. Shaky, thank you for bringing Stussy here. From now on, leave everything to me. With that, York, carrying Stussy, turned and quickly went to her room door. With a reach of his hand, the door opened, and the two disappeared around the corner of the door. Shaky looked at the closed door, her expression complex. Finally, she let out a long sigh and left the area. I hope, This is a good ending for Stussy. In the blink of an eye, a night passed. Stussy was still in a hangover, and York carefully got out of bed. He first went to the kitchen to fill his stomach and then brought back breakfast for her. On the way, York encountered Whitebeard, and the two exchanged glances, understanding each other implicitly. Just as they passed each other, Whitebeard whispered softly, "Although I don't like her, please don't let her down. Don't worry. You don't need to concern yourself with that." Back in the room, Stussy had slowly woken up. But at this moment, besides the headache common to hangovers, she also appeared particularly fragile, like a startled kitten. She lay on the edge of the bed, her hands stretched forward. "Yo, York, where did you go? I still have Newgate's shadow in my mind. Help me forget him." Stussy ultimately chose York, which was both surprising and not so surprising. It just gave the Rocks pirates more to talk about, maliciously inciting discord between Whitebeard and York. However, Whitebeard was completely unmoved, and York, as the victor, naturally had even less to say. Every night, Stussy would proactively make York intoxicated, even causing Gloriosa to feel a tiny bit jealous. Fortunately, Gloriosa was an understanding woman. She knew how suppressed Stussy's emotions had been all these years, and when she suddenly found an outlet, she naturally couldn't help but pour them out wildly. Thus, a month passed in the blink of an eye. Stussy's frenzy finally subsided, and Gloriosa also moved in, allowing York to fully enjoy the bliss of having two women every day. On this day, Rocks, as usual, gathered all the core members of his pirate crew, preparing to go to Elbaf again to invite Harold. He never gave up on wanting Harold's help. For this, he even had Golden Lion move the frozen research facility behind Skull Mountain. After several days of sailing, Rox's pirate cruise ship arrived at the coast where Ida's tavern was located. Rox disembarked first, directing Golden Lion to set up the frozen research facility in a nearby valley. Harold, who had already received the news and was waiting there, watched Rox's actions, his expression seeming somewhat unwelcoming. "Yo, Harold. I've brought you something good. Come and see." Harold said nothing, following Rox into the newly set up frozen research facility. Click. The extra lights installed by Rox's men were turned on, and the cold storage, filled with chilly air, gradually lit up, revealing countless frozen giants before Harold. This is. Harold's pupils constricted, his face filled with shock. Is this? The legendary Great Hammer Battle Group. Rox grinned. Guess where I found them? Harold's face darkened. He had guessed the answer but was reluctant to say it. Wahahaha. Rox had no such scruples as Harold, laughing loudly. It's the world government's territory. I found them in a forbidden research facility unknown to anyone. Harold, seeing such evidence, do you still want to join the world government? Harold's eyes narrowed, and the hostility he had been radiating since landing on the island gradually dissipated. He let out a long sigh. I received orders from the world government that if I wanted to join them, I had to kill you. So, from the moment you landed on the island, you've been radiating killing intent. Rox gazed at Harold, a grin on his face. You've been used, Harold. The world government has no sincerity at all. They just want to treat your giant race as weapons of war, or rather, slaves on the battlefield. Harold fell silent again, leading everyone back to Ida's tavern. Plates of Elbaf's unique giant delicacies were brought to the table. Harold sat by the bar, propping his head with one hand, his face troubled. What should I do? That violent history, in the name of warriors, has now become shackles for Elbaf, which aims for peace. Many allied nations were once attacked by Elbaf. Without the permission of the world government or the celestial dragons, Elbaf will never be able to enter the world circle. Rox sat cross-legged on the bar beside Harold, still adhering to his theory. So Harold, join me. As long as we overthrow all these celestial dragons and the rules that hinder peace. Your Elbaf can embrace peace however it wants. Harold shook his head. No. This is just another cycle of violence. Moreover, I am responsible for the people of my country. I cannot risk their lives by participating in a losing battle with a scoundrel like you. Rox snorted coldly, genuinely annoyed by Harold's stubbornness. At this moment, York jumped from a nearby table onto the bar. Harold, since you believe we are bound to lose, why not listen to my suggestion again? Harold turned to look. He remembered York. Last time, this young man indeed offered a theoretically feasible plan, but he didn't execute it. Thinking of this, Harold nodded. I'm all ears. York paused briefly, then spoke. In my homeland, there were once two proverbs. 1. Dignity exists only on the sword's edge. Truth exists only within the cannon's range. 2. Seek peace through struggle, and peace will endure. Seek peace through compromise, and peace will perish. Peace is precious. Rare. Seldom can it be maintained for long. There are too many foolish people in this world. They simply don't understand any reason beyond swords. Because they have never stepped onto a battlefield, they have no reverence for death. Also because they have always been the victors. The superiors. Only when others beg them for peace. Never when they discuss peace with others. So Harold, it's meaningless for you to constantly try to appease the world government. They simply cannot hear your ideals of peace. The only way to make them sit at the negotiating table and calmly discuss peace with you is through swords. Furthermore, you lack understanding of the giant race's history. Elbaf 800 years ago and the world government were sworn enemies. You were already enemies. Since 800 years ago. Either the world government is destroyed. Or Elbaf kneels down like a dog. Like a slave. The peace you desire, apart from these two options, has no other choice. York's words plunged the entire tavern into complete silence. Harold, Rox, Ida, and the entire Rox pirate crew, all looked at York in shock. How do you know? Harold couldn't believe it. The history of the giant race. How do you know? Of course, it was because he had read the manga in his previous life. But he certainly couldn't say that at this moment. The Void Century. This history was erased by the world government. York said. I don't know why the long-lived giant race didn't pass down this history through oral tradition, but I know one thing. During the Void Century, the giant race once followed a leader. This leader was overthrown by the ancestors of the current celestial dragons during the Void Century, which led to the current world government. Harold. If you truly want to pursue peace, first, understand this period of history roughly, then consider how to negotiate with the world government. Harold pondered York's words. He recalled a conversation he had years ago with the giant race elder Yarulu. At that time, Elder Yarulu had subtly warned him that in the eyes of the world government, the giant race was a race of villains. He had only thought Yarulu was referring to their past raids on allied nations, never imagining that the true root cause was the legendary Void Century. Was the giant race an enemy of the world government from the very beginning? Harold frowned. This was truly the first time he had heard of it. At the bar, Rock's gaze was similar, his view of York having changed significantly. Seeing that Harold had taken his words to heart, York didn't linger, turning and leaping back to the large dining table. His reason for intentionally interjecting into Rock's and Harold's conversation wasn't merely to show off. More importantly, it was to forge a friendship with Elbaf. Not just with Harold, but also with the two Elbaf princes, future kings of Elbaf, who were crouching behind the bar. Given Oda's usual approach, Fish Man Island, as if forced into action, produced a Sea King, Shirahoshi, to assist Luffy in becoming the new Joy Boy. Elbaf, being such an important arc, had no reason not to produce a prince or princess to mirror Shirahoshi's role and become another major asset to Luffy. And according to the information York possessed, one of Elbaf's two great princes, Haruden, would become a member of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet in the future. While his strength was decent, he looked like nothing more than a giant race member with strong talent. In contrast, the young Prince Loki, whom York only met after coming to Elbaf with Rox, and who had fully inherited Harold's ancient giant race bloodline, seemed to fit this conjecture more. The Rox pirates would sooner or later fall apart. Not only because York knew the outcome of the God Valley incident in advance, but also because the entire Rox pirates crew was too disorganized, not at all like a team that could succeed. York naturally had to prepare for the future after the pirate crew disbanded. The banquet ended. Even as the party broke up, Rox still hadn't managed to successfully invite Harold. However, the reason Harold gave this time was different from before. It was no longer for the sake of so-called peace, he simply felt that Rox couldn't succeed. To challenge a vast organization that had ruled the world for over 700 years with merely a dozen people, and a dozen disloyal people at that, was no laughing matter. Rocks, if you truly want to invite me, then do as York said initially. Establish a sufficiently large nation, build a sufficiently powerful army. Otherwise, with the few people you have now, there's no way I can risk the lives of my nation's people with you. Although Rox was still displeased, Harold's reason this time was indeed more convincing. However, he was already quite old, trying to switch to kingdom building now was almost impossible, so he could only continue on his current path. And so, the Rox pirates returned empty-handed once again. Of course, the frozen giants they had painstakingly moved earlier were not moved back, instead, they remained in Elbaf. This was both entrusting Harold with their safekeeping and allowing them to return to their homeland. Time flew by quickly, and another year passed in the blink of an eye. It was now 37 years before Luffy set sail, the year 1483 of the sea calendar. Overcast skies, wind, and rain. A bizarre incident occurred on Hashinosu Island. Have you searched everywhere? Chief Marlin and his guards on duty last night were killed. Chief Marlin couldn't hold out. Impossible. Who could it be? A large group of pirates surrounded a cluster of corpses. Among them was Chief Marlin, one of the core members of the Rox Pirates and the unifier of the entire West Blue underworld. Soon, this news was conveyed to the Skull Mountain in the center of the island, to the Rox Pirates who had just awakened from their rest. What did you say? Rox and Whitebeard were simultaneously shocked. Our Shaki was kidnapped. A massive search operation erupted on Hashinosu Island. However, even after digging 3 feet deep, no one found any clues. Glorioso wept sorrowfully. The other members of the Rox Pirates all had grim expressions, and the many pirates of Hashinosu Island were, needless to say, even more so. The fear that Shaki might have been killed, the anger and sorrow of losing Shaki, countless complex emotions enveloped the entire Hashinosu Island. Soon, news of Shaki's abduction and disappearance swept across the entire world like a hurricane. What is that fool Rox doing? An enraged Roger tore up the newspaper, and black and red Haoshoku lightning erupted from him. I'm going to beat him to death. Rayleigh, also reading the newspaper, trembled with rage. Shaki. Similar anger and grief were not only happening within the Roger pirates. Shaki's influence spanned almost the entire world. Not only were the pirates suffering, but people all over the world were plunged into immense grief, unable to focus on their work. The entire world's economic activity stagnated for several weeks because of this. However, if a person couldn't be found, they simply couldn't be found. Everyone could guess that Shaki's disappearance must have been due to a betrayal within the Rox Pirates. Not only betrayal, but also contact with outsiders. Only then could Marlin and his subordinates be killed, and Shaki kidnapped and taken away, without anyone knowing. Rox wanted to conduct an internal investigation. But to put it bluntly, every single member of the Rox Pirates was a suspect, including himself. Outside pirate crews were even more confused about the situation, so they directly regarded the entire Rox Pirates as enemies. After all, Shaki was kidnapped on Rox territory, so the responsibility naturally fell on the Rox Pirates. And so, a seemingly endless great war began. Countless pirates from all over the world, with the goal of destroying the Rox Pirates, would directly open fire and launch attacks whenever they encountered them at sea or reached the waters near Hashinosu Island. Their strength might not be great, but their fury made even Rox feel helpless. In this situation, only ruthless slaughter could bring these confused pirates back to their senses. Thus, war and slaughter became the main theme of the new year. The Rox Pirates fought and killed for almost an entire year. Almost all pirates with any strength in the New World seas actively came forward to be slaughtered clean. Ultimately, Rox finally re-established his position as the world's strongest pirate crew through slaughter. And it was at this time that brand new news reached Hashinosu Island. Shaki was still alive. And she was on an island called God Valley. Shaki. You're still alive. Excited cheers echoed throughout Hashinosu Island. Is this true? That's great. Where is it now? God Valley. Where is that? The ordinary pirates on the island argued among themselves about God Valley's exact location. Inside the giant Skull Mountain in the center of the island, the Rox Pirates were also debating this intelligence. Wang Ji's expression seemed a bit unnatural. He questioned with a slight nervousness, "It's very suspicious. Is this intelligence source accurate? What if it's false intelligence, and we're falling into an enemy trap? Except for York, no one else noticed his abnormality. Their minds were entirely focused on Shaki. As one of the few strategists in the Rocks Pirates, Stussy also had her own intelligence methods. She responded to Wang Ji's doubts. There have been some upheavals within the Marine, so the intelligence is undoubtedly true. John looked at the intelligence, which had already been written down, his face greatly surprised. Became a game prize for the Celestial Dragons. So, it was the government guys who kidnapped Shaki. Shaki-chan. Golden Lion finally had news of Shaki, overjoyed to the point of tears. But at the same time, black and red lightning flickered across his body. Clearly, while the news of Shaki being alive made him happy, the world government, who kidnapped Shaki, also ignited his fury to its extreme. Whitebeard noticed the details in the intelligence with a solemn expression. The Celestial Dragon's human hunt. I originally thought it was just a rumor, but I didn't expect it to be true. Charlotte Linlin squatted to the side, deep in thought. Besides Shaki, the game prizes also include devil fruits. Kaido, you really want them, don't you? Oh. What abilities do they have? Kaido was a bit eager to try. Devil fruits that can be used as prizes by the Celestial Dragons shouldn't have bad abilities, right? Mama, if that's the case, I must get one for my child too. Chong Mianbao looked at the gradually excited crowd, feeling helpless, but still advised, it's so obvious, could it be a deliberately released trap? Shut up. Rocks suddenly roared loudly. Those who are afraid stay on the island. We're leaving. To God Valley. The Rocks Pirates set sail. Except for the guilty Wang Ji, everyone else chose to participate in the operation. Whether this was a trap or not, since Shaki might be in God Valley, there was no reason to let the opportunity pass. Meanwhile, the Roger Pirates, who had also been in a slump for nearly a year, instantly became excited and revived. Roger. Jabba. What kind of place is God Valley? Jabba. It's not very close. But there's still time. Roger grinned, looking at his companions on the ship. Are we going? My lads. Isn't that obvious? The usually calm Rayleigh suddenly shouted. After a year of psychological torment, he finally understood his true feelings. Roger laughed heartily. It's said that Rocks has already taken action. Don't let them get there first. At the same time, on the Marine side, the news of the Roger Pirates movement was captured by Marine intelligence officers immediately, and then Admiral Sengoku called Garp, who was still on vacation in East Blue admiring beautiful women. What did you say? Roger went too. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Originally, Garp didn't want to get involved. So what if the Celestial Dragon's field trip was attacked by the Rocks Pirates? It would be best if those disgusting Celestial Dragons were all taken out by Rocks and his crew. However, since Roger, the man he pursued but could never catch, also went, there was nothing he could do. Garp had no choice but to temporarily interrupt his vacation, call his subordinate Bogard, and other colleagues, and return to Marineford directly from East Blue by crossing the Calm Belt. Then he would transfer to Holy Land Mary Geoise, cross the Calm Belt again from the New World waters, and head towards God Valley in West Blue. Back to the Rocks Pirates. The pirate crew was sailing on the sea. They had just crossed the Calm Belt that separates the New World waters and West Blue. Rocks suddenly called York alone to the captain's cabin. What do you want with me so suddenly? York looked calm, but he genuinely didn't know why Rocks had called him. Rocks had remained silent since entering the room until York, impatiently, stood up to leave, finally calling out to stop him. Can I trust you, York? York paused, turning to look at Rocks. I don't know if Kaido has told you, but currently, in the entire pirate crew, the only one who won't betray you, I can only guarantee myself. Rocks took a deep breath, slowly exhaling, as if he had finally made up his mind. Since that's the case, I'll tell you a secret that no other crew member knows. I have a hidden name. Actually, my real name is Davy D. Jibek. York raised an eyebrow, the legend of Davy D. Jones. Wahaha, Rocks chuckled softly, you really know. The Davy family is a family that the world government has always wanted to completely eradicate. With the legendary pirate, Davy D. Jones, as their direct ancestor. They once ran rampant in the underworld and are still barely surviving to this day. York nodded gently. To say he was surprised by this information was indeed surprising. To say he wasn't surprised, well, it was just like that. It was like the first time he learned in the manga that King was from the Lunarian race. So there's such a peculiar race in the pirate world. But that was all there was to it. It was just another persecuted race revealed by the world government. 2 years ago, my child was born. Rox pulled a bottle of wine from a nearby liquor cabinet, uncorked it, and took a swig. I followed your advice. To prevent danger from affecting my wife and child, I sent them to my hometown, letting them rely on the Davy family. York's spirit suddenly perked up, realizing. Your hometown wouldn't happen to be. Rox smiled and nodded gently, it's God Valley. York's eyes widened, realizing he still knew too little about God Valley. So, the world government capturing Shaki was essentially to lure you there. No. That's an island where the celestial dragons gather. They absolutely wouldn't want me to go there. Rox grinned. For them, this should also be a coincidence. It's just. I truly feel that I am being pulled by some great, fate-like power, as if everything is inevitable. Taking Shaki and provoking the wrath of the pirates was their miscalculation. But what I truly can't let go of are my wife and child. My goal is simply for them to survive safely from that island. So York. In this matter, I hope you can lend me a hand. Rox's request was agreed to by York. He had no reason to refuse. Over the years, while he hadn't received any special treatment in the Rox pirate crew, he had still gotten some help from Rox. Whether it was sword fighting training or hockey training, Rox had held back almost nothing. Although York and he didn't have the formal title of master and disciple, there was somewhat of a master-disciple relationship between them. Additionally, York had a vague idea of who Rox's child was. The future Blackbeard teach. The age matched perfectly. The main point was that York didn't believe Rox's child would remain unknown in the future. And in Luffy's era, the only one who matched in terms of age, demeanor, ambition, ability, and even appearance was Blackbeard teach. Rox's entrustment was just a small interlude. York couldn't possibly publicize it widely within the pirate crew. After their meeting, the voyage was smooth sailing, and several days later, they successfully arrived off the coast of God Valley. Enemy attack. It's the Rox pirate crew. The Marines on outer guard screamed, the alarm was sounded, and cannons began to roar. Whoa ha 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 ha. However, their defenses were completely useless. Rox's pirate ship was several times larger than a Marine flagship, forcefully pushing aside the Marine ships' defenses and storming onto the shore. Oh, my lads. Rox appeared at the bow of the ship, shouting loudly. Shaki. Treasures. Devil fruits. Let's not fight among ourselves here. Let's cooperate for now and act together. The treasures will be split evenly when we return. No objections, my lads. Fishman babble. Shaki cannot be split evenly. Golden Lion. Of course, the first guy to rescue her will be captivated. Silver Axe. Ah. There will be no compromise on this matter. John. No. Shaki will be captivated by the one who gets the most treasure. Whitebeard. Do as you please. I'm worried about her as a friend, well, being captivated isn't bad either. Stussy. After I rescue Shaki, can the credit be given to York? Chong Mianbao. Wang Ji, who stayed on the island, is forbidden from entering the bar. Charlotte Linlin. What a bunch of fools, even if the world turns upside down, Shaki won't spare you a glance. Gloriosa. Linlin. That's not necessarily true. York is an exception. Kaido. I'll leave Shaki to you guys. I want the devil fruits. York. Don't worry, Kaido, if I can get the fruits, I'll definitely give you one. Rox. Stay close to me. My lads. Rox was the first to leap from the bow of the pirate ship. York, emanating a sacred white light, was the second to leap from the bow. The Rox pirate crew all stiffened, collectively cursing, York, you fool. Didn't we agree to cooperate? I'll clear the way. York shouted without looking back, the holy light radiating from him knocking down hundreds of Marine soldiers. They all fell to the ground, their bodies arched like shrimp, their expressions intoxicated and enraptured. Joy, happiness. The Marines who were previously firing guns and cannons at full force to stop Rox and the others were instantly cleared out. Seeing this, the Rox pirate crew, though still annoyed that York had subtly tricked them, merely snorted. However, York had no intention of waiting for them. The moment he jumped from the bow and landed, he quickly shot up. The holy light released from his entire body covered a larger area as he leapt high. So comfortable. The Marine Vice Admiral, who was commanding the operation from a distance, let out a muffled groan, his body uncontrollably bending at the waist. Adolph D. York. What kind of bizarre ability is this? The high-leaping York had no interest in dealing with this Vice Admiral. He had many objectives for this trip. The first objective, of course, was to seize the devil fruits offered as prizes. If he remembered correctly, there should be 6 of them. The Azure Dragon fruit could be given to Kaido as a favor, and the Paw fruit could be given to Kuma as in the original story. If he could get all 4 remaining ones, he could freely choose one to compensate for his current shortcomings after he takes down Vegapunk in the future. The second objective was naturally the kidnapped Shaki. York was determined to have this woman. Of course, the premise was that she hadn't been defiled by the celestial dragons this year. If she had already been played with by the celestial dragons, then he would leave her to Rayleigh, just doing a good deed. The third objective was to protect and take away Rox, wife and child. The reason it was ranked third was mainly that Rox himself was still present, and Rox would certainly care more about the lives of his wife and child than he would. Having clarified the order of the mission objectives, York directly ignored all the Marines who came to stop him. Under the radiance of the holy light, its effect was even more useful than Conqueror's Haki. York advanced towards the interior of the island, scanning left and right for possible targets. Bad news. Pirates are here. The panicked celestial dragons angrily cursed at a group of Marines. Suddenly, a sacred white light shone over. The celestial dragons who were cursing and the Marines who were being cursed all stiffened. Immediately after, they fell to the ground as if their souls had been extracted, letting out strange cackles and arching their waists forward. York changed his route and leapt towards this spot. As he landed, he extended his palm. Sacred, magically patterned tentacles were released from his palm, quickly coiling around the celestial dragons present. Oh. The pleasure brought by the ability instantly intensified several times, and the celestial dragons let out exaggerated exclamations. York asked, "Where is the podium? Where is Shaki imprisoned? And where is the Davy family?" The celestial dragons, now under the control of the ability, answered everything they knew. The podium is in the central plaza, Shaki is also there, the Davy family. I don't know, they're like rabbits, they've hidden. York's lips curved into a smile upon hearing this. Thanks for the intel. To thank you, I grant you a joyful death. The holy light tentacles coiling around the celestial dragons gradually tightened like pythons, and at the same time, the pleasure the ability bestowed upon them increased exponentially. The celestial dragons' heads swayed left and right, letting out exaggerated, high-pitched exclamations. Crimson liquid, mixed with pale yellow, seeped from their astronaut-like clothes. Suddenly, the celestial dragons' screams ceased abruptly, and their breathing stopped completely. Adolph D. York, you dare. A Marine Rear Admiral, curled on the ground, witnessed this scene and couldn't believe York actually dared to be so ruthless. York glanced at him indifferently, having no interest in wasting more time with him. After killing these celestial dragons, he directly leapt up and quickly rushed towards the canyon between God Valley's 2 unique large mountains. Central Plaza, it should be in the center of the canyon, right? York guessed. He wasn't entirely sure, but then again, the information about God Valley hadn't been fully released before he transmigrated. York's advance speed was the fastest among everyone. Although the others also caught up immediately, York was in a hurry, and the holy light he released was only to clear the obstacles in front of him. Some Marines who saw the Rock's pirate crew and immediately hid in cover were not affected by his ability. After York passed, when Golden Lion, Whitebeard, and the others arrived, these Marines rushed out of their cover, becoming stumbling blocks on their path. Furthermore, the Marines' support was actually very timely. Marines who were not illuminated by the holy light continuously rushed over from a distance. This caused Rox and York, who had charged down first, to open up a huge gap with the group behind them. Don't stop me from saving Shaki. Golden Lion furiously activated his Devil Fruit ability, deforming the earth into a giant lion's head that swallowed countless Marines. Shaki. Do you want to kill Shaki? Silver axe cursed, splitting the earth lion created by Golden Lion in half with an axe. Golden Lion looked chagrined at this, and Whitebeard also temporarily put aside his intention to use his devil fruit ability. The power of their devil fruit abilities was too great, it would be terrible if they accidentally injured Shaki. Moreover, they were not clear about Shaki's exact location, only able to roughly determine a position in the center of the island and charge in, gradually diverging from York's path of advance. Alice. Teach. Where are you? Rox quickly advanced along the path York had opened, his gaze constantly scanning left and right, his observation hockey fully activated. He knew that his wife and son would definitely not be in the center of the island. As hunted individuals, they would certainly try their best to escape and hide, so the possibility of them being on the outskirts of the island was higher. However, precisely because they were trying their best to escape and hide, it made it difficult for Rox to sense their location with observation hockey. This search could only be done by relying on his eyes to make judgments. Returning to York, his advance could truly be described as unstoppable. With the holy light clearing the way, any Marine who had a wife or girlfriend couldn't even stand straight in front of him. Those Marine generals who had the ability to break through his power with hockey also seemed to not be on this island. So York was truly unstoppable, and he was the first to rush into the Grand Canyon. K. Mochi. Marines who came to block them fell in batches, and terrified celestial dragons also fell in batches. They hadn't had time to evacuate before York arrived here. Saint stop. K. Mochi. York walked past a celestial dragon. He did not kill this celestial dragon. It wasn't that he didn't want to, but he was racing against time. Getting the devil fruit first was more important. Advancing all the way, York successfully saw a plaza in the middle section of the Grand Canyon. The plaza was semicircular, built against the cliff on one side of the Grand Canyon. In the center of the semicircular plaza was a high platform, with 9 pillars arranged in a circle on the platform, each with a small treasure chest. Devil fruits. But why are there 9? York was startled, then his eyes became serious, and his steps halted. The reason was simple. He not only saw the 9 devil fruits on the podium but also a group of guys who had just gathered, whose attire was completely different from ordinary celestial dragons and marines. God's Knights. For the first time, York felt that rushing too fast was not entirely beneficial. Pirate. He's that fast. At the same time York discovered the God's Knights, they naturally also discovered York. They were also surprised that York had rushed here so quickly. A sacred white light bloomed from York's body, and many of the God's Knights let out groans. Even Garen, the captain of the God's Knights, was no exception. York's serious expression gave way to a playful smile. All the male members were affected by my ability. It seems the female members are more self-respecting. There were a total of 7 members of the God's Knights currently in front of York, and their presence felt very similar to the later 7 warlords of the sea. Leading them was Figureland Garen, with his moon-shaped hairstyle. York had initially thought he was red hair, but he turned out to be a blonde. On either side of him stood 2 female members, one with a cold demeanor and tall stature, and another with a cute demeanor, wearing a mushroom hat. York had seen these 2 female characters in his past life's manga. There was also a Grim Reaper-like figure wearing a horned helmet, whom he had also seen in the manga. However, besides them, another gas mask-wearing member and a puffy-haired female member York knew were not present. Instead, there were 3 completely unfamiliar new faces. A blonde man with a bitter expression and a cross-shaped beard on his chin. A tall woman, over 5 meters tall, with fangs, sunglasses, large breasts, a thin waist, and a shapely butt, most likely possessing Fishman bloodline. And finally, a member over 6 meters tall, broad and burly, appearing entirely in an animal-type human-beast form. York had not seen any of these 3 people in his past life's manga. However, seeing all the male members among them affected by his ability, the pressure eased considerably. I thought all the God's Knights had Admiral-level strength, but it seems I misunderstood. This couldn't be helped. Before York transmigrated, the name of the God's Knights was still quite renowned. Report. Roger pirate crew spotted on the West Blue. Before the 2 sides, who had discovered each other, could make a move, a new report came in. After Rox, it's the Roger pirate crew. Garen's face darkened. He broke through York's ability with Haki, pulled out a Den Den Mushi, and commanded, "All Marines go protect the celestial dragons. All pirates are to be handled by the gods' knights." However, his order was not sent out at all. Because the Den Den Mushi he had just pulled out, under the illumination of the holy light, also became immersed in pleasure, making it impossible to complete the communication task. Useless thing. The irritable Garen slammed the Den Den Mushi to the ground, smashing it. He slowly drew the long sword from his waist, and a fierce killing intent instantly bloomed. "First, deal with this pirate in front of us. Then we'll go support the other battlefields." "Understood." The members of the God's Knights responded. Garen stepped forward, charging, and launched the first attack. He swung the long sword in his hand, cutting horizontally as fast as a streak of light. He's not even using Conqueror's Haki coating. I'm truly being underestimated. Sizzle. Sizzle. Black and red lightning bloomed from York's body. His fist was first coated with a flowing armament Haki, and then with black and red Haoshoku Haki. Fist bone. Crushing fist. His right foot stomped heavily, cracking the earth. Power rose from the ground, a direct punch. A terrifying shockwave erupted, and the charging Garen's face instantly changed drastically. "Nani?" With a cry of surprise, he was completely swallowed by the shockwave, returning as quickly as he went. Rumble. The shockwave roared through the valley, and all the members of the God's Knights showed astonishment. Several male members who couldn't break York's ability with Haki were blasted away on the spot. The female members resisted with difficulty, but they were also in a sorry state. How is this possible? He's actually this strong. The shockwave swept past them, rushing into the canyon on the other side of the plaza, sending countless celestial dragons and marines flying together. After landing, innumerable people died tragically. Crack, crack. The sound of bones cracking echoed from the dust, and York walked out of it step by step. Is that all there is to it? The legendary God's Knights. Through the dust, York's image was somewhat blurry. He slowly raised his hand, and evil tentacles, like octopus limbs, shot out from the smoke. The female members of the God's Knights, unable to dodge in time, were all hit. Their wrists or ankles were entangled by the holy light tentacles released by York. Ah! Sharp screams erupted from their mouths. They, who still had the strength to resist moments ago, instantly went weak in the knees and fell to the ground. They propped themselves up with their hands, trying desperately to get up, but could not muster any strength. Pirate. Garen's furious roar suddenly exploded, and black-red lightning burst forth. The tentacles York had released were severed by Garen's blade, and then Garen charged directly at York's body. A world-class famous sword, imbued with Garen's powerful Haki, once again slashed horizontally at York. York clenched his fist, also delivering another Haki-infused punch. The blade and fist collided in midair, terrifying Haki lightning burst forth, dark clouds rolled in the sky, and God Valley's first sky-splitting event occurred during the clash between Garen and York. "I thought you'd be as strong as Rox and Roger. Turns out you're nothing special." York's lips curled into a sinister grin. In the manga he'd read in his previous life, Garen had a full display of power in God Valley, looking like he could take on Rox and Roger one-on-one. He hadn't expected the opponent to be almost on par with his current self. Perhaps. Garen's true peak was after he gained immortality in Luffy's era. Boom. The Haki, compressed and rubbed to its limit, exploded, and both York and Garen flew backward simultaneously. York retreated into the group of celestial dragons who were still immersed in his ability, while Garen retreated into the group of God's Knights who had also not recovered from his ability. Our strengths are evenly matched. We won't be able to determine a winner in a short time. Instead of fighting until someone else reaps all the benefits, how about we make a deal now? York raised his hand, and before Garen could launch his next attack, he released a large number of holy light tentacles, entangling the bodies of dozens of surrounding celestial dragons. Celestial dragons should have internal competition, right? If too many of your kin die at once, even you, I'm afraid, would have trouble explaining it, wouldn't you? Threat. This was a blatant threat. Garen's face was grim. York's methods, though despicable, had indeed hit his weak spot. What do you want? Garen asked in a deep voice. York raised his hand and pointed at the treasure chests on the high platform not far away. Devil fruits. And Shaki, whom you've captured and brought here. Impossible. Garen immediately refused. York didn't waste words with him and directly amplified the ability on one of his tentacles dozens of times. Oh 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 oh. A celestial dragon, entangled, let out a painful moan. It was supposed to be a pleasurable experience, but he only felt pain. Gah! Garen. Amidst the screams, this celestial dragon died of exhaustion. The other celestial dragons entangled by the tentacles were startled, momentarily waking from the pleasure, but then immediately fell back into it. However, they did break free for a moment, or rather, York intentionally lifted the ability for a moment. These celestial dragons all voiced their opinions. AGR. Agree to him. Garen. I can't die. If we die, the Figureland family will face the most severe impeachment. It's just a mere devil fruit and a woman. Can they compare to our precious lives? Garen gritted his teeth, cursing these celestial dragons furiously in his heart. What a bunch of idiots. Do you know what it will mean if all those devil fruits are taken by this pirate? Shaki was one thing. Although he liked this woman very much, she was, after all, just a woman, nothing that couldn't be sacrificed. The key was those devil fruits. Those were devil fruits they had carefully selected. Every single one was top tier. They had paid countless prices to retrieve these fruits. Now, they were to give away these top tier fruits with just one sentence. Did they not know how many powerful enemies these devil fruits would create in the future if they fell into the hands of pirates? However, circumstances were against him. Garen couldn't possibly let so many celestial dragons die at York's hands. Although the gods' knights had the power to execute their own kind, that didn't mean they could allow pirates to slaughter their own kind. If York really killed that many people, Garen would definitely be in deep trouble. Taking a deep breath, Garen slowly sheathed his long sword. He looked at York. How can I trust you? York smiled and replied, I am a trustworthy person. What I promise, I will definitely deliver. Of course, more importantly, you have no choice right now. Either you agree to my demands, and I will leave once I get what I want. Or, you take all those devil fruits and Shaki, and I will kill 2/3 of the celestial dragons here, release the remaining 1/3, and let them report you. Oh, don't worry. I know there are 19 families of celestial dragons. I will definitely leave one survivor for each family. I guarantee you will absolutely become a thorn in the side of the other 18 families. Creak. Garen was so angry that his teeth gnashed audibly. That fool York was truly cunning, always hitting him where it hurt most. He clenched his fists, veins bulging. But in the end, Garen was forced to relax. The devil fruits can be yours. You can also take that woman Shaki. But my kin. You absolutely cannot harm them. York showed a relieved smile on his face. Only the wise submit to circumstances. With that, he raised his hand and pulled on the tentacles. The celestial dragons, controlled by his ability, slowly stood up under the manipulation of the tentacles. With stumbling steps, they surrounded and guarded York, walking to the high platform in the center of the plaza. York reached out and took a treasure chest, opened it, and a devil fruit lay quietly inside. He took out a burlap sack, specifically for treasures, from his pocket and put the devil fruit inside. Then came the second, the third, the ninth. York hadn't expected that the 9 treasure chests actually contained 9 devil fruits. Greedily licking his lips, and looking at Garen's angry gaze, York released the holy light tentacles from 23 celestial dragons. This is half the number. To show you my sincerity. And Shaki, where is she locked up? Garen, while directing the returning Somas and others to drag the celestial dragons released by York back to his side, pointed to a small door on the side of the high platform. York raised his hand, used Armament Hockey's internal destruction to directly break the lock, and then pulled open the door. A woman, meticulously cared for, showing no signs of torment, and still unresponsive even under the holy light he emitted, stood quietly in the center of the room. Her hands were bound behind her back with handcuffs, and a chain connected her to the ground, preventing her from breaking free on her own. She looked at York, who had suddenly appeared outside the door, and a hint of shock, a touch of emotion, a trace of complexity, and a subtle sense of sadness welled up in her beautiful eyes. It's not Rayleigh, it's York. Shaki. I've come to save you. York, of course, noticed the complexity and sadness in Shaki's eyes. Having already had 2 women, even if he hadn't noticed such details before, he wouldn't miss them now. He didn't care that Shaki still had Rayleigh in her heart at this moment. Gloriosa wasn't like that at first. And Stussy too. Her complete devotion to him was just a matter of time. He stepped behind Shaki, reaching out to help her unlock her shackles. Suddenly, Shaki shouted, "Be careful. This is sea stone." York paused, smiled slightly at Garen outside the door, and pulled a short knife from his pocket. "I already guessed this would happen." Swish. Swish. With armament hockey's internal destruction and swordsmanship capable of severing steel, the sea stone handcuffs were no different from tofu in front of York. Shaki, having smoothly broken free from the handcuffs, felt a wave of relief wash over her. She turned her head and sincerely thanked York. "Thank you, York. It's too early to thank me. You know what I want." Shaki bit her lower lip, her heart in a dilemma. "Stop overthinking. We haven't escaped yet." York's words brought Shaki back to her senses. She followed York out of the small room where she had been held. The gods' knights were blocking the doorway, glaring at the two of them. York smiled calmly, raising a hand to pull the holy light tentacles entanglement around the useless celestial dragons. They immediately let out high-pitched shrieks. Garen's face darkened as he tightened his grip on the hilt of the sword at his waist. "Pirate. You've already gotten what you wanted. Release my kinsmen." "Don't worry. Of course I'll release them. But the prerequisite is that you all clear the way." York and Garen stood in a standoff, both slowly circling the useless celestial dragons in the middle, one moving left and the other right. Finally, York led Shaki back to the path he had initially used to enter the Grand Canyon, and Garen and his group returned to the center of the plaza. "Deal done. These wastes are yours." The holy light tentacles entanglement around the useless celestial dragons were retracted by York. He pulled Shaki, quickly creating distance. Garen hurried forward in pursuit, but stopped after passing the fallen celestial dragons. He needed to protect these wastes and retreat quickly, otherwise they might once again be taken hostage by pirates. An enraged Garen could only watch helplessly as York led Shaki away. He glanced back at his kinsman, still immersed in York's devil fruit ability, and for the first time felt that these wastes were truly more trouble than they were worth. While York successfully rescued Shaki, Whitebeard, Golden Lion, and others on the other side encountered trouble. They were first held back by the timely support of the Marine, forcing them to distance themselves from York and Rox, who had entered the island first. Then, a large number of pirates from Hashinosu Island, who had accompanied Rox to God Valley, rebelled against them. Kill. Take down the Rox pirates. Today's the day to make a name for ourselves. These pirates, who usually only ran errands for them on Hashinosu Island, attacked Whitebeard and his crew like madmen at this moment. Whitebeard and his crew had just dealt with the Marine, and in the blink of an eye, they were surrounded by these rebellious pirates. A massive brawl was inevitable. Just when they managed to deal with this batch of pirates, another completely unfamiliar group of pirates appeared. They seemed to be local pirates from the West Blue, who had come upon hearing the news, and their goal was also to take down the Rox pirates. "This is so annoying. Get out of the way, you small fry. Don't hinder me from saving Shaki-chan." The irritable Golden Lion immediately unleashed his Conqueror's Haki, and an invisible shockwave roared, causing the local West Blue pirates to fall like cut wheat. However, this only took care of a portion of them. Further away, other pirates from the New World were still swarming towards them. They didn't dare to wield their blades against the celestial dragons on the island, but they dared to challenge the authority of the Rox pirates. "Don't get entangled with them. Saving Shaki is urgent." "Newgate. Who allowed you to give orders? You have no right to command me. Are you so fixated on meaningless arguments?" "Shaki. HMPH. I'll be the one to save Shaki first." The Golden Lion snorted coldly and, taking advantage of everyone's inattention, flew directly into the sky. However, while others overlooked him, Silver Axe did not. The moment the Golden Lion secretly flew up, Silver Axe also leapt from the ground, grabbed the Golden Lion's ankle, and forcibly dragged him down. "Kuma. What are you doing? Don't even think about sneaking off." "Shaki. I'll be the one to save Shaki." "Kuma." The group argued noisily, tripping each other up and pulling each other's arms, but at the same time, they followed Whitebeard's suggestion. While dealing with the harassment from the small fry pirates, they advanced towards the center of the island. Returning to York's side, he led Shaki away from the center of the Grand Canyon, clearing the way with holy light, just as he had on the way in. Few Marine had the ability to stand upright in front of York. After an uneventful rush out of the Grand Canyon, York was astonished to find that the entire island had plunged into a massive free-for-all. Where do we go? Shaki asked, a little nervous. Let's go find rocks first. York replied, and Shaki had no objection. The Grand Canyon of God Valley ran from northwest to southeast. After York and Shaki rushed out of the canyon, they were in the southeastern town of the entire island. The two walked through the town, looking for the most intense fighting. If all went as expected, Rox was most likely there. It's York of the Rox Pirates. Ha. And Shaki. Kill him. Shaki will be ours. Ahem. Pirates from who knows where spotted York and Shaki and immediately prepared to attack. However, before they even got close, as soon as the holy light shone on them, they all fell to the ground, faces showing expressions of joy. York frowned slightly. The behavior of these pirates was completely opposite to how they acted on Hashinosu Island. These guys, have they betrayed us? It was surprising, yet also seemed to be expected. Rox and they were not in a superior-subordinate relationship, everyone had merely gathered on Hashinosu Island. In the past, Rox led them to steal money together, so their relationship was naturally harmonious. Now, Rox intended to lead them against the world government, at least on the surface. It didn't seem strange for these cowardly weaklings to betray them at a critical moment. And amidst this great chaos, several young, nervous, yet courageous voices caught York's attention. Quickly. The devil fruit is in the center of the Grand Canyon. Whether we can escape this island depends on this opportunity. Heaven has given us good luck. These Marine, for some reason, are all lying on the ground with silly smiles on their faces. We must not squander this luck. Following the voices, he found a young boy with a head almost as large as his body, leading several others of similar or even younger age, moving through the chaotic battlefield. Their clothes were tattered, and they still wore handcuffs, though the chain connecting them had been broken by something. York's eyes narrowed slightly. He brought up the images of these people in his mind. Emporio Ivankov, Ginny, Bartholomew Kuma, and a few others I don't recognize. I remember. The intel on God Valley was leaked by Ginny. Kuma's paw fruit was also obtained here. York looked down at the burlap sack he was still carrying. Now that the paw fruit was in his hands, it was unlikely Kuma would be able to rush into the plaza to steal and eat it. Moreover, he had no intention of letting these kids go. With a flash, York intercepted Ivankov and the others in front of Shaki's puzzled gaze. Yo, little guys. What are you looking for in the central plaza? Is it a devil fruit? Ivankov, who was hurrying along, crashed into York and fell to the ground. Then, hearing York's words, his large face instantly turned pale. Ivankov was the backbone of this entire small team. When he stopped, everyone else stopped with him. Looking at York, who was radiating holy light as if a divine child had descended, Ivankov swallowed hard. You, who are you? Me. I'm a pirate. York smiled slightly, reaching into a sack and pulling out a devil fruit shaped like a bear's paw. Are you going to the central plaza because you're looking for this? The paw fruit. Ivankov gasped in surprise, and the others with him followed suit. This is the paw fruit. Hope. The hope of leaving this island. York raised his hand, dodging Ivankov's pouncing hands, and smiled, want it. Ivankov, who had pounced to the ground, didn't speak, and the others just secretly swallowed their saliva. York continued to smile, if you want it, you'll have to come with me. I can take you off this island. The group of children looked hesitant, and Ivankov's eyes flickered. In the end, he was the one to make the final decision. All right. We'll go with you. As long as you can take us off this island. A hint of relief appeared in York's eyes. He suddenly realized that this Ivankov kid actually had quite a bit of decisiveness and charisma. But thinking about how he would not only become the queen of the Okama kingdom in the future but also create a thriving level 5.5 in Impel Down, it seemed he should have such abilities. Thinking of this, York's gaze searched the crowd and quickly settled on a burly, plump boy. I heard that among the escapees being hunted by the celestial dragons, there's a rare buccaneer child. Who is it? Is he among you? I am. The plump boy nervously raised his small hand. If you're going to kill someone, you can kill me. Take the others off this island. York chuckled. Who said I was going to kill anyone? Tell me, what's your name? Kuma. Bartholomew Kuma. Excellent. Kuma boy. This fruit is yours now. York casually tossed the paw fruit directly into Kuma's arms. The latter caught it, flattered, and the others also looked surprised. Of course, it's not without a price. York pointed to Ivankov beside him. After you eat the fruit, you can save others as you wish. But you and he, both of you must become my subordinates. Oh, right, I heard that the intelligence about this island was leaked by a young girl. Which one did it? Step forward. You also have to stay. As he finished speaking, a pink-haired little girl with freckles on her face stepped out from the crowd. It was me. What's your name? Ginny. Very good. Kuma boy. Ginny. And this leader. You three must stay. Everyone else can be saved by you. York grinned. Is this a fair trade? The slaves looked at each other, seemingly still unable to make a decision. Finally, it was still Ivankov who gave the answer. All right. We accept your terms. He then stood up and looked at Kuma. Kuma. Quickly eat the devil fruit. Then use the fruit's ability to send everyone else away. Save as many as you can. As long as one person can escape from this hell. That will be our victory. Upon hearing this, Kuma boy finally no longer hesitated, opened his mouth wide, and swallowed the paw fruit he held in his palm in one gulp. It's so disgusting. The sickening taste of the devil fruit made Kuma boy involuntarily stick out his tongue. After recovering, he looked at the paw-like pads that suddenly appeared on his palm and gently patted a rock. The rock instantly shot up and flew, quickly disappearing into the distant sky. How amazing. No time for awe. Kuma. Quickly use your ability to save people. Ivankov shouted loudly, knowing the preciousness of time at this moment. Kuma nodded honestly, and the others, who had also seen how the rock flew out just now, all cast expectant gazes at Kuma boy. Kuma boy carefully patted the others with his palm, thinking of safe places, and one by one, the slaves disappeared from in front of him. In a flash, only Ivankov, Ginny, and Kuma boy remained on the scene. York smiled and said, let's go. Take me to find the other slaves and escapees. A friend's child of mine is among them. Ivankov and the other two exchanged glances, roughly guessing the reason York suddenly helped them. So, without another word, they immediately changed direction and led the way. Shaki had been silently observing York's actions. It wasn't until the three youngsters started leading the way, and York took her along, that she spoke. I didn't expect you to have such a side. These children are truly pitiful. A person's good and evil are never decided unilaterally. I have many more secrets, you can discover them slowly in the future. Shaki glanced at York upon hearing this, then said no more. Her heart was actually still conflicted at this moment. She hoped that the person who came to save her now would be Rayleigh, but she never expected it to be York. At the same time, regarding the future, she didn't know what to do. Continue to Hashinosu Island to open a bar. York probably wouldn't agree, would he? He wasn't the kind of man who would obediently listen just because she gave him a wink. But if she really kept following York, she might become like Gloriosa in the future. Shaki currently didn't want to become like that, but it seemed she had no choice. Led by the three youngsters, York and Shaki found many hidden slaves, as well as the local residents of God Valley. All these people were sent out of God Valley by Kuma boy using the paw fruit's ability. Of course, before sending them away, York never forgot to ask, is there anyone among you named Teach? Or does anyone know Teach? Unfortunately, none of these people knew him. Until a certain moment, a terrifying hockey pierced through the sky. Alice. Rocks, painful roar echoed across the island, and York's eyes narrowed. Something's happened. He and Shaki exchanged glances, and the latter nodded firmly. Rocks took good care of me on Hashinosu Island. I won't just look out for myself and run. York then looked at the three youngsters. You all try to escape on your own first. A very terrifying battle might break out on this island next, and even I might die if I'm not careful. Remember, you've received my devil fruit, so you're already my subordinates. Even if you flee to the ends of the earth, I will definitely find you. With that, York directly left the three youngsters, leading Shaki, and quickly rushed in Rock's direction. Watching their retreating figures, the three youngsters exchanged glances. Ivankov spoke, "Save people first. We'll repay this pirate's kindness when we have the chance later. The upcoming battlefield is not for us to participate in. No one is allowed to act impulsively." Meanwhile, the Rock's pirates, who were striding into the Great Canyon, also saw Rock's freak out hockey and heard his pained cry. Whitebeard's eyes narrowed. Wielding Murakumogiri, he swung it forward with a full-force horizontal slash. Trees, buildings, rocks, and the marines and pirates in the way were all bisected by this single strike. Terrifying power swept in all directions. Within a 180-degree radius in front of Whitebeard, everything was cleared away except for his own people from the Rock's pirate crew. "I'm not aiming for you, I'm cutting down the enemy. How many pirate crews have landed? What happened to Rocks?" Charlotte Linlin grabbed Whitebeard's collar, her rage palpable. "Stop lying. I almost died. If you want to settle things here, just say so." Golden Lion also flew over from not far away. "You tried to kill me just now. Newgate." Shaki. Whitebeard was truly exasperated. Did none of these people notice Rox's screams? "Something's wrong. Linlin." Kaido appeared from the other side. "It looks like something happened to Rox." "Kaido," Charlotte Linlin pouted, "who cares about that fool? Haha. It's the Rock's pirate crew. Take them down. We'll be the world's #1 pirate crew." Having just had the area cleared by Whitebeard's massive attack, a large number of pirates immediately swarmed over again. They seemed fearless, fixated on Whitebeard and the others, attacking them en masse. Hey, these guys are even pretending to target Shaki. Golden Lion's expression was grim. He temporarily stopped arguing with Whitebeard, and the four of them, working together, cleared the area once more in an instant. "All of you, go to hell and rest in peace." Amidst the roars, hundreds of pirates were killed by the combined efforts of the four. A young marine, who had fortunately survived Whitebeard's earlier attack, stared blankly at everything. Then, with a face full of guilt and salvation, he picked up a baby who had been knocked unconscious on the ground and silently fled. At the same time, not far behind this young marine, a female member of the God's Knights with fishman blood was also full of terror. She picked up the baby she had snatched from the young marine's hands and fled in another direction. The quartet paid no attention to these two fleeing nobodies. Golden Lion turned his head and saw that because he had run over to argue with Newgate, he had become separated from the main group, including Silver Axe and John, who were rescuing Shaki. Immediately, he stopped bothering with Whitebeard, quickly took flight, and pursued the main force. "Shaki-chan, I'm coming to save you." After Golden Lion flew away, Charlotte Linlin continued to argue with Whitebeard, wanting to fight him to the death right then and there. Just then, a powerful figure suddenly leapt over from a distance. First-class fishing ground found. Die. Sea Kings. Fist Bone. Galaxy Impact. The terrifying punch was like a nuclear explosion, sending Whitebeard and Charlotte Linlin, who were arguing, along with Kaido, who was watching helplessly nearby, flying in disarray. "It's Garp. Run. We've dragged this out too long." Whitebeard got up from the ruins and ran without hesitation. Kaido shoved off the giant rock pressing down on him. "Aren't we going to take him down?" "Let's not." Charlotte Linlin waved her hand. "Zeus. Prometheus." "Yes, Mama." With fire in her left hand and lightning in her right, Charlotte Linlin unleashed a combined attack. Heavenly Thunderfire. Boom. The terrifying explosion struck Garp. The Marines who had followed Garp were all blown away, but Garp himself was unharmed. Amidst the rising flames, his figure was like a demon. "This little flame isn't even enough to cook a prime beef rib, Linlin." Charlotte Linlin was startled and completely lost the desire to continue fighting Garp. "Run. Kaido." Whitebeard also added from the side, "Fighting Garp will waste more time. Let's go see Rox. It seems something happened to him." Charlotte Linlin's eyes wavered for a moment, then she gritted her teeth and nodded. "All right. I'll listen to you." The path to the center of the island was blocked by Garp. To get through, they would have to take a detour. Since Whitebeard suggested going to find Rox first, they would follow along and see. If Rox was truly killed, the plan to snatch the devil fruit might have to be temporarily abandoned. Escaping was the priority. Kaido was a bit unwilling, but since Whitebeard and Linlin both said so, he couldn't act alone. Compared to the Whitebeard trio, whose time was delayed by various trivial matters, York's group arrived at Rox's location earlier than them. They did not immediately reveal themselves but instead hid in a corner to observe the situation. Ahead was a mountainous area on the outskirts of the town. A natural, fissure-shaped cave was located at the foot of the mountain. Rox was currently holding a woman whose chest had been pierced, weeping bitterly. His other hand was holding a child, about 2 or 3 years old. The child's face was full of terror, also weeping bitterly at the woman. Across from Rox, suspended above the ground, was a woman with her mouth and nose wrapped in bandages, heterochromatic pupils, dressed in a dark military uniform, with devil-like wings and a tail on her back, holding a trident. Something like an arrow, or perhaps a bandage, wrapped around her arm, with traces of blood still on it. Clearly, the wound on the chest of the woman in Rox's arms must have been her doing. Rox, you said you'd come to see me again. Why are you in such a sorry state? The woman with heterochromatic pupils spoke in a man's voice, as if she and Rox were old acquaintances. Rox angrily looked up, his eyes filled with killing intent. Kidnapping a man's wife and child. How despicable. Ha ha ha. The woman laughed loudly, still in a man's voice. This is an unexpected surprise. I didn't expect your wife and child to be on this island as well. It seems you also cannot escape the fate of being controlled by God. God. Are you talking about yourself? Rox slowly stood up. The woman in his arms had already lost her breath. Holding the child with one hand, he slowly drew the long sword from his waist. Terrifying haki began to entwine around the sword. Sizzle. Black and red lightning whipped the ground, and Rox instantly exploded. Die. Rox roared in anger and swung his sword at the woman. The woman wielded her devil-shaped trident, also entwined with extremely powerful Haoshoku haki, colliding with Rox's long sword through the air. Rumble. Dark clouds churned in the sky, splitting open a chasm. Of course, given the excessive number of strong individuals on the island at this moment, apart from York and Shaki who were on site, no one else knew which two strong individuals' collision resulted in this chasm. Such powerful haki. Shaki let out a low cry, and York quickly covered her mouth. Of course, he was also truly shocked by the strength of this woman's haki. Rox's haki strength was something York had never witnessed in his life. He had never seen anyone with stronger haki than Rox, including Roger. Unexpectedly, this woman in front of him could actually match Rox. Could it be, she is a Mu? No, she can't be a Mu. York instantly rejected his inner guess. The reason was simple. This woman's strength didn't match York's conjecture. A Mu had, after all, genuinely ruled this world for nearly 800 years. With nearly 800 years of accumulation, if her strength was only on par with Rox, who hadn't eaten any devil fruit, it would be too undignified. The Haki Joy Boy stored in a knot was able to cover an entire island, blast all the Gorosei summoned by teleportation back to Holy Land Mary Geoise, and even intimidate Amu herself. Even in Luffy's era, Amu still couldn't defeat Joy Boy, so she shouldn't be unable to even suppress Rox, who hadn't eaten a devil fruit. Sure enough, the woman's next words directly confirmed York's guess. Is this all? The strength that can be exerted while possessing is still limited. Boom. The clashing haki exploded, and Rox and the military uniform woman simultaneously flew backward. The shockwave spread, blowing away all the bushes that had served as cover for York and Shaki, forcing them to be exposed. Seeing that hiding had failed, York simply stopped hiding. He stood up with a smile. Yo. Rox. Looks like you found your wife and child. Rox was slightly surprised to see York appear, and even more so when he saw Shaki standing beside York. You succeeded. You're really fast. Well, by luck. York led Shaki to Rox, side, and the latter very straightforwardly handed the child he was holding to York. This is my son, Teach. Please take good care of him. This was entrusting his child. York solemnly took Teach. This boy had been directly knocked unconscious during the haki clash between Rox and the military uniform woman. He was sleeping soundly now, so there was no need to worry about him making a fuss. What's with that woman? York asked. Rox replied, Just a possessed puppet. Her strength is really not weak, she can even fight you to a draw. Heh heh, I'll kill her right now. Rox expressed his defiance and once again actively swung his sword to attack. York, holding Teach, retreated with Shaki, creating a distance to observe the battle. Boom. An astonishing hockey collision occurred again, but the military uniform woman's gaze shifted to York. Are you Adolf D. York? Amu has never seen your ability before. Are you interested in working under Amu? York raised an eyebrow. Oh. Is this an invitation to join the God's Knights? It's quite tempting. If I join the God's Knights, can I have any woman I want inside? As soon as he said this, before the military uniform woman could say anything, Shaki behind York became nervous first. York, you wouldn't. York raised a hand, stopping Shaki's next words. The military uniform woman's eyes turned cold, expressing strong dissatisfaction with York's attitude. Don't push your luck. Mortal. Ha. So stingy, not a shred of sincerity. York mocked with a laugh. The military uniform woman said nothing more. York's attitude disgusted her. Rumble. Rox took advantage of the military uniform woman's distraction, striking her with a sword and splitting her diagonally in half. You dare to chat outside the battle while fighting me. Don't look down on people too much. However, the military uniform woman was not killed by this. She looked at Rox with indifferent eyes, and her body, split in half, reassembled as if time were reversing. Immortality. York's eyes grew serious. He knew that the Gorosei possessed immortality. He hadn't expected that this possessed God's Knights member would also have immortality. Too bad, the manga before I transmigrated hadn't updated to the method of breaking immortality. This ability can probably only be nullified by soaking the target in the sea. Rox grinned, looking at the restored military uniform woman. He said nothing, only unleashing a Haoshoku slash from a distance. This time, the military uniform woman unexpectedly did not take the blow head-on with her body, but dodged to the side, allowing Rox slash to cut a huge gash in the ground. Oh. Why did you dodge that slash? The military uniform woman remained silent, only activating her devil fruit ability, controlling the bandage like arrows in her hand to shoot towards Rox. Wahaha. Immortality is useless. So you don't dare to fight in close combat anymore. Rox swung his sword, deflecting the arrows, and charged forward again. Today, I shall slay a god. This sword shall be named God Slayer. Gripping his long sword with both hands, after condensing his haki to the extreme, he brought it down with full force. The military uniform woman raised her devil trident, also blocking Rox strike with haki that was equally extreme. In the ensuing battle, both sides were evenly matched. Rox slash seemed to have broken her immortality, which made the military uniform woman start to be wary of getting injured. However, the military uniform woman's combat experience was too rich, coupled with haki not weaker than Rox, and her devil fruit ability to control arrows, making their combat power evenly matched. It was impossible to determine a winner in a short time. It was at this moment. Just as York was enjoying watching the battle, he suddenly felt a stir in his heart. He then quickly twisted his body, cradling Teach in his arms. Boom. An explosion occurred behind York, and Shaki immediately gasped. York. York turned his head with a grim expression. Not far away. A burly old man with a large beard, over 5 meters tall, wearing a black suit, and holding a cane, was walking towards them step by step. Inferior mortals. You are not worthy to gaze upon the fighting form of that great one. His tone was arrogant, completely disregarding York and Shaki, as if in his eyes, they were just two ants. J. Garcia Satan Saint. Old Saturn. York murmured inwardly, while also speaking out the other party's identity. Gorosei. Why aren't you protecting the celestial dragons, and what are you doing here? I am precisely here to protect that great one. Old Saturn's eyes narrowed, York raised an arm, and an explosion occurred again. Really? You say you're here to protect, but in reality, you're here to kill this little brat. Armament haki coiled around York's arm. If he hadn't actively blocked just now, it might have been Teach's little head that exploded. I didn't expect that even a Grand Gorosei could be so despicable. Against enemies. There is no need for any morality. Old Saturn roared, his already plump and burly body rapidly expanding. In the blink of an eye, old Saturn transformed into a giant spider with bull horns. Zone type, spider fruit, mythical zone, Ushi Oni form. York blurted out old Saturn's devil fruit ability, his eyes grave. You ant. Hand over that fool spawned by rocks. Old Saturn gave the order, as if York would certainly obey him. York scoffed at his words. What kind of thing are you? You keep calling people ants, has no one taught you what politeness is when speaking? You ill-mannered thing. No wonder you can't even be a good dog. Simple insults, ultimate enjoyment. York turned and handed Little Teach to Shaki to look after, then stepped forward to face old Saturn. Click. Clack. He moved his body joints, producing clear sounds. York clenched his fists, and black-red Haoshoku lightning erupted from his entire body. Come on. Let me see just how strong the legendary Gorosei are. As his words fell, York stomped his foot, and his entire body shot out like a streak of light. Old Saturn was slightly startled. His massive body, whether he disdained to dodge or simply couldn't, was successfully approached by York. Fist bone. Crushing punch. Mimicking Garp, this move created by York used a precise method of exerting force to unleash his current maximized Haoshoku punch. Boom. Old Saturn's entire face was distorted on the spot, blood gushed from his mouth and nose, and he let out a muffled groan of pain. Rumble. His colossal body reeled back several steps. Old Saturn seemed to have completely underestimated the power of York's punch. Having struck successfully, York did not relax. As old Saturn healed as if time were reversing, York raised both hands, releasing a large number of holy light tentacles to entangle the giant spider. Feel the joy. York roared softly, activating his devil fruit ability. Old Saturn's old eyes instantly widened, and the lower half of his beast-human form instantly became thoroughly wet. In fact, drops of water, after soaking through his pants, dripped directly onto the ground. Ant. You are courting death. A tremendous sense of shame instantly engulfed old Saturn's reason. Powerful Haoshoku Haki and armament Haki erupted from his body, forcibly shattering the holy light tentacles York had wrapped around him. York didn't care about this, retreating with a faint smile. Calling me an ant with every breath, to put it bluntly, if not for your immortality, you'd be nothing special. Ah! Old Saturn roared in fury, his giant spider body charging madly towards York. A pair of front legs lifted high, enveloped in his strongest Haoshoku Haki, pierced towards the diminutive York in front of him. York clenched his fists again, striking back without yielding an inch. Rumble. The giant spider's front leg and York's fist collided in the air. Old Saturn's face was flushed with shame and anger, while York grinned widely in excitement. Suddenly, the fist that was clashing with old Saturn was withdrawn by York. He spun around, evading the sharpest spikes of the spider leg, then clasped his hands together, grabbing the front end of the spider leg, and exerted his entire body's strength. Ha! Ah! Amidst a suppressed roar, old Saturn's massive body was directly flung by York. He spun him in a full 3.5 windmill rotations, letting go and flinging him away the moment the potential energy reached its peak. Old Saturn's massive body was directly flung several hundred meters away by York's brute force. This move was once again not very damaging, but extremely insulting. Old Saturn's face was almost twisted with rage. He immediately took a deep breath and spat out dozens of venomous liquid balls at York, who was several hundred meters away. York narrowed his eyes, quickly rushed to a boulder created by the aftermath of the battle, grabbed it with both hands, and flexed his muscles. The flat-lying boulder was stood upright by him, blocking all the incoming venomous liquid balls. Then, York shoulder charged, sending the boulder flying. Boom 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 boom. The venom adhering to the boulder exploded, turning the massive door-sized stone into countless flying fragments. Dust fell from the sky, and several holy light tentacles pierced out from the smoke. A fierce glint flashed in old Saturn's eyes, and these tentacles exploded one after another. However, just then, York quickly circled around the side of the smoke, and his long accumulated punch once again struck old Saturn's cheek. For the second time, his face was distorted, blood gushed from his mouth and nose, his horns were shattered by York's punch, and old Saturn almost rolled his eyes and fainted. Seizing this opportunity, York unleashed a barrage of punches, similar to Luffy's Gum Gum Gatling. The damage wasn't high, but every single punch landed on old Saturn. Ant. You have completely enraged me. Old Saturn roared, and a suppressive force field suddenly appeared. York's body trembled, then his hockey erupted, breaking free from Old Saturn's suppression. However, he was momentarily restricted, and one of Old Saturn's spider spikes successfully pierced York's abdomen. From the start of the battle until now, it was the first time he had managed to hit York. York was sent flying by this blow, rolling several times on the ground in a somewhat disheveled manner. After getting up, a trickle of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. My defense is still a bit weak, huh? York murmured softly, raising a hand to wipe away the blood from his mouth. This was unavoidable. His devil fruit was a paramesha type, not a zone type, so it didn't provide any bonus to his physique. Moreover, he didn't have innate physical talent, he was essentially a glass cannon. Fortunately, although his defense wasn't high, his recovery ability was decent. On the opposite side, Old Saturn, having finally sent York flying, did not immediately pursue. He stood his staff in front of him, hands clasped over the staff's head, adopting an elegant posture of assured victory. Ant. Now you know the vast difference between you and I, like heaven and earth, don't you? Hey. York scoffed at his words, replying. Ah. Indeed, it's a difference of heaven and earth. With that, York turned and walked away without the slightest hesitation. Old Saturn narrowed his eyes, feeling ignored. Instantly, an unidentifiable rage surged in his heart again. Just a mere ant. How dare he ignore him? Angry, he was about to make a move, but just then, the gradually departing York raised his hand and snapped his fingers. Oh, ah, ah. Old Saturn instantly let out an inhuman shriek. Creamy yellow, mixed with bright red liquid, gushed out from his body, and Old Saturn rapidly shriveled up. His immortal power quickly repaired his body, restoring it to its full state. But Old Saturn's consciousness did not return immediately after his body was restored. Therefore, more mixed two-colored liquid gushed from his body, and his body shriveled up once again. Then, his immortal power took effect again. Restoration, shriveling, restoration, shriveling, a cycle that repeated endlessly, with no end in sight. The departing York wore a faint smile. His devil fruit ability had 4 uses. The first, holy light illumination, directly triggered the pleasure of those who had tasted the forbidden fruit, ineffective against those who kept themselves pure. The second, holy light tentacles, by entangling the target, regardless of whether the target was involved in forbidden acts, directly enhanced primal pleasure, with a maximum multiplier of 50 times. The third, a variation of holy light tentacles, by bestowing pleasure upon the target, extracted a small amount of life force from the target who had lost physical control, to replenish himself. The fourth, touch of holy light, through direct physical collision, transformed pleasure into a seed implanted within the opponent's body. Its lower limit was 3 times pleasure, and its upper limit could be stacked indefinitely, depending on the number and duration of collisions. The fourth ability had a flaw. That was, if the opponent detected that York had planted a seed in his body, he could directly remove it with armament hockey. After removal, York would have to start from scratch to inject the pleasure seed again. At the same time, full-body armament hockey could prevent York from injecting the seed at its root. But in contrast, neither using full-body armament hockey nor detecting York's actions. The injected pleasure seeds, after being stacked to a certain magnitude, successfully detonated. The surge of pleasure at that moment was not something an ordinary strong-willed person could withstand. Once the initial line of defense of will failed, one would only be able to clear the ability using armament hockey when the ability's duration expired and consciousness automatically returned. Besides this, purification-type abilities, similar to the wash fruit, could also help clear the abilities York applied. In a sense, Suru was also an existence similar to a natural enemy to York. However, after all was said and done, Suru wasn't even on this island. From the moment Old Saturn's will defense was breached, apart from patiently waiting for York's ability to naturally weaken, he could not recover his combat ability in a short period of time. It was only because he had an immortal body, otherwise, he would already be dead by now. And just now, York, taking advantage of Old Saturn's arrogant wait for self-healing, landed a continuous barrage of punches, a total of 42 punches. Although to ensure the frequency of attack, 41 of those punches had low stacking layers, only 6 times, the total stacking still amounted to 246 times. Adding the initial punch that shattered old Saturn's head, York directly injected 50 times the pleasure seed, totaling 296 times. 296 times the primal pleasure was enough for old Saturn to be thoroughly pleased until the end of the entire God Valley battle. Thanks for watching.